Scott Gordon's world turns upside down as rough alien hands drag him from the dusty surface of Epsilon Prime. One moment he's on routine patrol. The next he's aboard a sleek Lurian spacecraft hurtling through space. The human soldier's mind races, trying to make sense of his sudden abduction. Hours later, Scott stumbles as he's shoved into a cavernous throne room on Luria Prime. His eyes adjust to the dim, azure-tinged light, revealing the imposing figure of Queen Gaia. The Lurian monarch towers over him, her iridescent exoskeleton gleaming with an otherworldly beauty. "Welcome, Scott Gordon of Earth." Queen Gaia's voice resonates through the chamber. "You have been chosen for a great honor." Scott straightens his back, years of military training kicking in despite his confusion. "What kind of honor?" he asks, voice steady despite his racing heart. The Queen's mandibles click in what might be amusement. A diplomatic mission of utmost importance. One that will forge a new era of human-Lurian relations. As Queen Gaia speaks, Scott notices the tension in the room. The Lurian High Council members shift uneasily, their compound eyes darting between their queen and the human interloper. One counselor steps forward, voice laden with concern. "Your Majesty, reconsider. Using a human for the ritual could spark interstellar conflict. Our species are barely at peace as it is." Queen Gaia's antennae twitch in irritation. The ritual must proceed. Our bloodline depends on it. And this human, her multifaceted eyes roam over Scott's form. He may be the one to survive. Scott's brow furrows. Survive? What aren't they telling him? Before he can voice his questions, a Lurian attendant ushers him out of the throne room. Scott finds himself led to a luxurious suite, a stark contrast to the holding cell he expected. As the door closes behind him, he can't shake the feeling that he's stepped into something far more dangerous than a simple diplomatic mission. Meanwhile, in a sterile laboratory deep within the palace, Lurian scientists pore over data on human physiology. They work feverishly, preparing for a centuries-old ritual that has claimed the lives of countless alien subjects. Queen Gaia observes their work, her fascination with the human species growing by the minute. Light years away, alarms blare at human military command. Scott's disappearance has not gone unnoticed. As search parties mobilize, racing against time to locate their missing soldier, they remain oblivious to the true nature of the danger he faces. Back in his quarters, Scott stares out at the alien cityscape of Luria Prime. He's been told to prepare for an important ceremony, but every instinct screams that there's more to this diplomatic mission than meets the eye. As night falls on the alien world, Scott can't help but feel that he's standing on the precipice of something that will change not just his life, but the future of human-Lurian relations forever. Little does he know, his very survival hangs in the balance, with the potential to ignite an interstellar war that could consume both their species. As preparations for the ritual continue in secret, the stage is set for a clash between human determination and alien biology, a test that no other species has survived in the long history of Lurian royal succession. As night settled over Luria Prime, Scott found himself unable to sleep, his mind racing with questions about his true purpose on this alien world. The luxurious quarters did little to ease his growing unease. When morning came, it brought with it a series of unexpected events that would set the stage for the challenges ahead. A sharp knock at the door startled Scott from his restless thoughts. Two Lurian attendants entered, their exoskeletons gleaming in the soft light of his quarters. "Scott Gordon of Earth," one of them chirped, "you are requested to attend a medical examination." Scott's brow furrowed. A medical exam? What for? The attendants remained silent, simply gesturing for him to follow. As they led him through the winding corridors of the palace, Scott couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this diplomatic mission than he'd been told. The medical bay was a stark contrast to the ornate palace halls. Sleek, silvery equipment lined the walls, emitting soft hums and occasional beeps. At the center stood a tall Lurian female, her iridescent carapace marked with intricate patterns that Scott assumed denoted her high rank. "Welcome, Scott Gordon," she said, her voice surprisingly melodious for a being with mandibles. "I am Dr. Zara, Chief Medical Officer of the Royal Palace. We'll be conducting a series of examinations to ensure your health and compatibility with our environment." Scott nodded, still wary. Compatibility? Dr. Zara's compound eyes seemed to flicker with an emotion Scott couldn't quite read. Merely a precaution. Lurian atmosphere can be quite different from Earth's. Over the next few hours, Scott underwent a battery of tests. Blood samples were taken, his reflexes tested, and strange devices scanned his body from head to toe. Throughout it all, Dr. Zara and her team of scientists murmured to each other in their clicking language, occasionally casting glances at Scott that made him feel like a lab specimen rather than a diplomatic guest. As the final test concluded, Scott couldn't help but notice a hint of excitement in Dr. Zara's demeanor. She turned to her colleagues, speaking rapidly in Lurian. Scott caught only fragments. Remarkable resilience and adaptable physiology before she switched back to English. "Thank you for your cooperation, Scott Gordon," Dr. Zara said, her tone carefully neutral despite the gleam in her eyes. "You may return to your quarters now. An attendant will fetch you for your next engagement." Back in his room, Scott barely had time to process the strange medical examination before another knock came at his door. This time, it was a single Lurian attendant, more elaborately adorned than the others he'd seen. "Scott Gordon," the attendant announced. "Her Majesty Queen Gaia requests your presence for a private audience." Heart racing, Scott followed the attendant through a series of increasingly ornate corridors. They finally arrived at a set of massive doors inlaid with what looked like precious gems. The doors swung open silently, revealing a breathtaking garden unlike anything Scott had ever seen. Bioluminescent plants cast a soft, ethereal glow over the scene. Strange, alien flowers bloomed in a riot of colors Scott had no names for. And there, seated on a crystalline bench, was Queen Gaia herself. "Scott Gordon," she said, rising to greet him. "I trust you're finding your stay comfortable?" Scott bowed awkwardly, unsure of the proper protocol. "Yes, Your Majesty. Thank you for your hospitality." Queen Gaia gestured for him to sit beside her. As they talked, ostensibly about the differences between their cultures, Scott couldn't help but notice the intensity of her gaze. Her multifaceted eyes seemed to drink in every detail of his face, his posture, his gestures. "Tell me, Scott," she said, leaning in closer. "What do you think of our world so far?" As Scott described his impressions of Luria Prime, he found himself drawn into the conversation. Queen Gaia was an attentive listener, asking insightful questions that revealed a keen intellect behind her regal facade. Hours passed, and Scott was surprised to find himself enjoying the exchange. As their meeting drew to a close, Queen Gaia placed a hand on Scott's arm. The touch sent an unexpected shiver through him. "I look forward to our future discussions, Scott Gordon," she said, her voice taking on a warmth he hadn't heard before. That night, as Scott lay in his bed, his dreams were filled with swirling colors and the image of Queen Gaia's penetrating gaze. He woke feeling strange, his senses somehow sharper, his body thrumming with an energy he couldn't explain. Little did Scott know that as he slept, events were unfolding that would soon thrust him into the center of a dangerous political web. In a dimly lit chamber deep within the palace, Counselor Thax gathered a group of like-minded Lurians. "The Queen has gone too far," Thax hissed, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Using a human for the ritual? It's an abomination that threatens everything we hold sacred." The conspirators nodded in agreement, their eyes glinting with shared purpose. "We must act swiftly," Thax continued. "The ritual cannot be allowed to proceed. For the good of Luria, the human must be eliminated." As the conspirators plotted, a shadow detached itself from a nearby pillar. Lyra, the young Lurian scientist, slipped away, her heart racing with the weight of what she'd just overheard. She hurried through the palace corridors, torn between her loyalty to her people and the growing feeling that what was happening to Scott was deeply wrong. Meanwhile, light years away, a human stealth ship carrying Lieutenant Sarah Warren and her team penetrated the outer defenses of Lurian space. Their mission: to find Scott Gordon and bring him home at any expense. As a new day dawned on Luria Prime, the pieces were set in motion for a confrontation that would shape the future of two species. And at the center of it all, still unaware of the true nature of his diplomatic mission, Scott Gordon prepared for another day in the alien palace, blissfully ignorant of the forces converging around him. As dawn broke over Luria Prime, Scott woke with a start, his senses immediately on high alert. The strange energy that had coursed through him the night before hadn't dissipated. If anything, it felt stronger. He sat up, running a hand through his hair, and froze. His hearing seemed sharper, picking up the faint hum of machinery that he'd never noticed before. Curious, Scott made his way to the ornate mirror hanging on the wall. His reflection looked back at him, unchanged at first glance. But as he leaned closer, he noticed subtle differences. His eyes seemed brighter, more vibrant, and his muscles appeared more defined. Something was happening to him, and he needed to find out what. Under the guise of exploring Lurian culture, Scott began to carefully navigate the palace corridors. His military training kicked in as he mentally mapped the layout, noting potential escape routes and security measures. As he rounded a corner, a familiar voice caught his attention. The human's physiology is responding remarkably well to the treatments. Dr. Zara's voice drifted from a nearby room. Scott pressed himself against the wall, straining to hear more. But will he survive the mating ritual? Another voice asked, concern evident in its tone. Scott's blood ran cold. Mating ritual? His mind raced, pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. The medical examinations, the Queen's interest in him, the changes in his body, it all pointed to something far more sinister than a simple diplomatic mission. Heart pounding, Scott continued his exploration, his newfound strength allowing him to move with surprising stealth. He needed more information, and he needed it fast. As Scott navigated the labyrinthine palace, Lyra, the young Lurian scientist, paced in her quarters. The weight of her knowledge pressed down on her, competing with her sense of loyalty to her people. She had overheard Counselor Thax's plot to eliminate Scott, and the thought of the human's death filled her with an unexpected dread. Lyra's antennae twitched as she recalled her interactions with Scott. His curiosity, his adaptability, his strange alien features, all had captivated her in ways she hadn't anticipated. The more she thought about the situation, the more certain she became that she couldn't stand by and watch him march unknowingly to his doom. Decision made, Lyra set out to find Scott. She moved through the palace with purpose, her compound eyes scanning for any sign of the human. As she turned a corner, she nearly collided with him. "Scott Gordon," she chittered, her voice low and urgent. "I must speak with you." Scott tensed, ready for a confrontation, but something in Lyra's demeanor made him pause. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra glanced around nervously before pulling Scott into a secluded alcove. "You are in great danger," she began, her words tumbling out in a rush. "The ritual they have planned for you, it is not what you think. It is a mating ritual, one that has claimed the lives of countless alien subjects before you." Scott's teeth clenched as Lyra confirmed his suspicions. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. As Lyra explained the true nature of his diplomatic mission, the changes to his body, and the plot against his life, Scott's mind raced with possibilities. He could attempt to escape, but the palace was heavily guarded, and he had no idea how to navigate the alien world beyond its walls. Moreover, If he fled, he risked sparking an interstellar incident between humans and Lurians. "What about Queen Gaia?" Scott asked, remembering the intensity of her gaze during their private audience. "Is she part of this conspiracy?" Lyra's antennae drooped slightly. "The Queen is bound by ancient tradition," she explained. "The ritual is meant to ensure the continuation of the royal bloodline. I do not believe she wishes you harm, but she may see no other choice." Scott nodded, processing the information. He needed more time, more information before he could make his next move. "Thank you, Lyra," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've taken a great risk in telling me this." As Lyra and Scott parted ways, each acutely aware of the dangers that surrounded them, another player entered the game. On the outskirts of the Lurian capital, Lieutenant Sarah Warren and her team established their hidden base of operations. "Any word on Gordon's location?" Sarah asked, her eyes scanning the holographic map of the city. "Negative, Lieutenant," one of her team members responded. "But we've detected unusual activity around the royal palace. Whatever's going on, it's big." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Keep monitoring. We need to find Scott and extract him before things escalate." Back in the palace, Queen Gaia stood alone in her private chambers, her compound eyes fixed on the alien skyline. Her mind was filled with thoughts of Scott Gordon, his strange, smooth skin, his expressive eyes, the way he moved so differently from her own people. She found herself drawn to him in a way she had never experienced before. As she contemplated the upcoming ritual, a sense of unease settled over her. The tradition had always seemed necessary, a sacrifice for the greater good of her people. But now, faced with the reality of Scott's potential death, she found herself questioning everything. "There must be another way," she murmured to herself, her mandibles clicking softly. Unbeknownst to the Queen, Dr. Zara was making a discovery that would change everything. As she pored over the latest data from Scott's examinations, her eyes widened in shock. "This can't be right," she muttered, rechecking her calculations. But the numbers didn't lie. Scott's unique human physiology, combined with the changes they had induced, suggested something unprecedented. Not only might he survive the mating ritual, but he could potentially form a lasting bond with Queen Gaia, a union that could bridge their two species in ways never before imagined. As Dr. Zara rushed to inform the Queen of her findings, Counselor Thax and his conspirators moved forward with their own plans. In a dimly lit room deep within the palace, Thax carefully handled a vial of potent toxin. "This will ensure the human's demise," he hissed to his fellow plotters. "We'll introduce it into the ceremonial chamber just before the ritual begins. By the time anyone realizes what has happened, it will be too late." The pieces were set, the players in motion. As the hour of the ritual drew near, Scott Gordon found himself at the center of a storm he barely understood, with the fate of two species hanging in the balance. He knew he had to act, but with dangers lurking around every corner and uncertain allies, his next move could mean the difference between life and death, not just for himself, but for the future of human-Lurian relations. As Scott contemplated his next move, he realized that time was running out. The ritual was approaching, and he needed to act fast. With newfound perseverance, Scott slipped out of his quarters, his enhanced senses on high alert. The palace corridors were eerily quiet, the usual bustle of Lurian activity replaced by an oppressive silence. Scott's muscles coiled with tension as he made his way towards Queen Gaia's private chambers, his footsteps barely audible on the polished floor. As he approached the ornate doors of the Queen's chambers, Scott hesitated for a moment. The gravity of what he was about to do deeply affected on him. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The sight that greeted him was unexpected. Queen Gaia stood by a large window, her regal posture slumped, her compound eyes fixed on the alien landscape beyond. At the sound of Scott's entrance, she turned, her mandibles clicking in surprise. "Scott Gordon," she said, her voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "What are you doing here?" Scott moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Your Majesty, we need to talk. About the ritual, about why I'm really here." Queen Gaia's antennae drooped, a sign of distress that Scott had learned to recognize. She seemed to deflate before his eyes, the weight of her responsibilities visibly crushing her. I suppose we do," she said, gesturing for Scott to sit. As they talked, the barriers between them began to crumble. Queen Gaia revealed the truth about the ritual, the ancient prophecy that had led to Scott's selection, and the conflicting emotions that had been tormenting her. "Our species has always relied on this ritual to ensure the continuation of our royal bloodline," she explained, her voice heavy with emotion. "But never before have I felt such connection to the Chosen One." Scott listened, his knees going weak from the revelations. As Queen Gaia spoke, he found himself drawn to her vulnerability, seeing beyond her alien features to the person beneath. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, Lyra was on a mission of her own. The young Lurian scientist crept through the sterile corridors of Dr. Zara's laboratory, her heart pounding with each step. She knew the risk she was taking, but the thought of Scott's impending danger spurred her on. As Lyra accessed the classified files on Dr. Zara's computer, her compound eyes widened in shock. The data scrolling across the screen revealed something unprecedented. Scott's unique human physiology, combined with the changes induced by the Lurian treatments, suggested a potential for survival and even compatibility with Lurian biology that defied all expectations. Just as Lyra was processing this information, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The sudden cacophony startled her, causing her to knock over a tray of delicate instruments. As they clattered to the floor, the laboratory door slid open, revealing Dr. Zara. The two Lurians stared at each other for a moment, the alarm still wailing in the background. To Lyra's surprise, instead of anger, she saw a glimmer of understanding in Dr. Zara's eyes. "You care for the human, don't you?" Dr. Zara asked, her voice barely audible over the alarms. Lyra nodded, her antennae twitching nervously. Dr. Zara moved swiftly to the computer, her fingers flying over the keys. "Then we must work quickly. These findings could change everything." As Lyra and Dr. Zara pored over the data, chaos erupted throughout the palace. Unbeknownst to them, Counselor Thax and his conspirators had set their plan in motion, releasing a potent toxin into the ventilation system of the ceremonial chamber. But their actions had triggered an unforeseen reaction with the chamber's ancient technology, causing a series of small explosions that rocked the palace foundations. In Queen Gaia's chambers, Scott and the Queen were thrown off balance by the sudden tremors. As the alarms blared, they rushed to the door, only to find it sealed by the automatic security lockdown. "We're trapped," Queen Gaia said, her compound eyes scanning the room for any means of escape. Scott's military training kicked in as he assessed their situation. "We need to find another way out," he said, moving to examine the walls and windows. As they searched for an escape route, the close proximity and shared danger ignited the spark that had been growing between them. Queen Gaia's alien features, once so foreign to Scott, now held a strange allure. Her multifaceted eyes caught the light, mesmerizing him. "Scott," she said, her voice taking on a new, softer quality, "if these are to be our final moments." Their faces drew closer, the barriers of species and duty momentarily forgotten in the face of their growing attraction. Just as their lips were about to meet, another explosion rocked the chamber, sending them stumbling into each other's arms. Outside the palace walls, Lieutenant Sarah Warren and her team saw their opportunity. The explosions had created gaps in the palace's formidable defenses, and they wasted no time in launching their infiltration. "Remember, our priority is extracting Gordon," Sarah instructed her team as they activated their stealth suits. Avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. As they breached the palace perimeter, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more complex than a simple rescue mission. The chaos around them spoke of internal conflict, and she wondered just what kind of web Scott had become entangled in. In the heart of the palace, the ancient artifacts brought out for the ritual began to pulse with an eerie light. The combination of the released toxin, the damage from the explosions, and the heightened emotions throughout the palace had awakened something long dormant within them. As energy crackled between the artifacts, casting strange shadows on the walls, the stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of Scott and Queen Gaia, but potentially the future of human-Lurian relations. The palace had become a powder keg, with multiple factions converging, each with their own agenda, and at the center of it all, a human and a Lurian queen, trapped together, their newfound connection about to be tested in ways neither could have imagined. The sudden violent tremor that shook the palace brought Scott and Queen Gaia back to their immediate reality. Dust rained down from the ornate ceiling as cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. "We need to move," Scott said urgently, his enhanced senses already picking up the ominous creaking of stressed architecture. "This section of the palace isn't stable." Queen Gaia nodded, her regal composure slipping for a moment as she cast a longing glance at her chambers. "You're right. Follow me. I know a way out." They rushed to the doors, which hissed open as the security lockdown disengaged. The corridor beyond was hazy with smoke, the acrid scent burning Scott's nostrils. As they moved swiftly through the palace, Scott noticed Queen Gaia's antennae twitching erratically. "Something's wrong," she said, her multifaceted eyes darting around. "The air? It's not right." Scott felt it too, a subtle wrongness that made his skin prickle. "The explosions might have damaged the ventilation system," he suggested, but a nagging suspicion told him it was something more sinister. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a group of Lurian guards. For a moment, Scott felt relief, until he saw the hostility in their postures and the weapons aimed directly at them. "Seize them!" one of the guards shouted, his mandibles clicking aggressively. Without hesitation, Scott stepped in front of Queen Gaia. Time seemed to slow as his augmented reflexes kicked in. He moved with fluid grace, dodging the first guard's lunge and using the alien's momentum to throw him into his comrades. Queen Gaia watched in awe as Scott dispatched the guards with inhuman speed and strength. His movements were a blur, each strike precisely calculated for maximum effect against Lurian physiology. Within moments, the guards lay unconscious at their feet. How did you do that?" Queen Gaia asked, her voice a mix of wonder and apprehension. Scott flexed his hand, equally surprised by his own capabilities. "I'm not entirely sure. The changes your scientists made to me, I guess they're more extensive than I realized." As they continued their journey through the smoke-filled corridors, Scott's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of distant gunfire. "There are others in the palace," he warned, "and they're armed with human weapons." Queen Gaia's antennae twitched in alarm. "Human weapons? But how dash?" Her question was cut short as another explosion rocked the palace. The floor beneath them buckled, and Scott instinctively grabbed Queen Gaia, pulling her close as they stumbled. For a moment, they stood there, bodies pressed together, hearts racing in tandem. Scott became acutely aware of the alien yet alluring scent of her exoskeleton, the way her compound eyes seemed to draw him in. The moment was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. They turned to see Counselor Thax leading a group of armed Lurians, his face contorted with rage. "There they are," Thax bellowed. "Kill them both." Scott and Queen Gaia sprinted down an adjacent corridor, the sound of energy weapons discharging behind them. As they ran, Scott noticed strange pulses of light emanating from various ornamental objects throughout the palace. "Your Majesty," he panted, "those artifacts, They're reacting to something. Queen Gaia glanced at the pulsing objects as they passed. The sacred relics of our ancestors. They've never behaved like this before. They ducked into a small alcove, catching their breath as Thax and his followers thundered past. Scott's mind raced, trying to piece together the chaos around them. "We need to find a way out of the palace," he said. "But first, I think we should try to locate Dr. Zara or Lyra. They might have information that could help us understand what's happening." Queen Gaia nodded, her royal bearing returning despite the dire circumstances. "Agreed. And Scott, thank you for protecting me." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the chaos around them faded away. Scott felt an undeniable pull towards her, a connection that transcended their biological differences. A burst of static from a nearby communication panel broke the spell. Through the interference, they heard fragmented voices. "Human intruders in Sector 7. Artifacts are interfering with. Find Gordon before." "Looks like we're not the only ones looking for me," Scott muttered. As they prepared to leave their hiding spot, Queen Gaia suddenly grasped Scott's arm. "Wait," she said, her antennae quivering with excitement. "I just remembered something. There's an ancient chamber nearby, one that holds historical records of our mating rituals. It might contain information that could help us." Scott weighed their options. The smart move would be to head for safety, but his curiosity and the potential for answers won out. "Lead the way, Your Majesty." They crept through the palace, avoiding patrols and navigating around areas where the structure had been compromised. Finally, they reached an inconspicuous door that Queen Gaia opened with a complex series of manipulations. The chamber beyond was dimly lit, filled with shelves of ancient scrolls and holographic data storage devices. As they entered, the artifacts around them pulsed with increased intensity, bathing the room in an eerie, fluctuating light. "Here," Queen Gaia said, pulling out a dusty scroll. "This details alternative methods for the mating ritual, ones that have been lost to time." As they pored over the ancient text, Scott's eyes widened. "This describes a process of gradual biological synchronization. It's non-lethal, but it takes much longer than the current ritual." Queen Gaia's compound eyes seemed to sparkle with hope. "This could be the answer we've been looking for, a way to fulfill the prophecy without sacrificing you." Their excitement was cut short as the door to the chamber burst open. Counselor Thax stood there, flanked by his followers, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Your treason ends here," Thax snarled, raising his weapon. Scott moved to protect Queen Gaia, his body tense for action. But before either side could make a move, a new voice cut through the tension. "Nobody move." Lieutenant Sarah Warren stood in the doorway, her team of human soldiers fanning out behind her, weapons trained on the Lurians. The ancient chamber had become a powder keg, with humans, Lurians, and the enigmatic pulsing artifacts creating a volatile mix. As all parties stared each other down, the fate of not just Scott and Queen Gaia, but of human-Lurian relations hung in the balance. The tense standoff in the ancient chamber was broken by a violent tremor that shook the palace foundations. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, momentarily distracting all parties. Scott seized the opportunity, grabbing Queen Gaia's hand. "This way!" he shouted, pulling her towards a narrow passage hidden behind a shelf of scrolls. As they ducked through the opening, Scott heard Sarah's voice behind them. After them, "Don't let Gordon out of your sight." The passage led them into a maze of corridors, the walls pulsing with the strange energy emanating from the artifacts. Scott's enhanced senses picked up the sounds of pursuit from multiple directions. "We need to get to the central control room," Queen Gaia said, her antennae twitching nervously. "It's our best chance to address my people and stop this madness." They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a group of Lurian civilians trapped by fallen debris. Without hesitation, Scott moved to help them. "Scott, we don't have time," Queen Gaia protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "We can't leave them," Scott replied, already lifting a heavy beam. His augmented muscles strained as he cleared the path, allowing the grateful Lurians to escape. Queen Gaia watched in awe, her compound eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured. "You risk yourself for strangers, even as you're hunted." Scott met her gaze, feeling the connection between them deepen. "It's who I am," he said simply. "Now let's move." As they continued their journey, the palace's power systems began to fail. Lights flickered and died, plunging sections of the corridor into darkness. Emergency beacons sputtered to life, casting an eerie red glow over the chaos. In the bioengineering lab, Dr. Zara and Lyra worked feverishly to synthesize the stabilizing agent. "We need those botanical extracts from the biorepository," Lyra said, her hands flying over a holographic interface. "Without them, the compound won't be stable enough." Dr. Zara nodded grimly. "I'll go. You stay here and prepare the base solution." She grabbed a small stasis container and headed for the door, pausing to look back at her protégé. "Lyra, if I don't make it back, dash." "You will," Lyra interrupted fiercely. "We're going to save them both." As Dr. Zara navigated the smoke-filled corridors, she encountered a group of young Lurian scientists. To her surprise, they offered to help, explaining their support for peaceful human-Lurian cooperation. "We've been disrupting Thax's communications," one of them said, "but the artifact energy is interfering with our efforts." Meanwhile, Scott and Queen Gaia approached a heavily fortified checkpoint near the central control room. Lurian guards stood at attention, their weapons wavering uncertainly between the Queen and the human beside her. "Stand down," Queen Gaia commanded, her voice regal despite the circumstances. "I order you to let us pass." The guards hesitated, mandibles clicking nervously. "Your Majesty," one of them spoke up, "we received conflicting orders. Counselor Thax claims you've been compromised." Scott tensed, ready for action, but Queen Gaia placed a calming hand on his arm. "Look at us," she said to the guards. "I stand here freely, alongside this human who has risked everything to help our people. Are these the actions of someone who's been compromised?" The guards exchanged glances, their determination visibly wavering. Suddenly, the lights in the corridor went out completely, plunging them into darkness. When the emergency lights flickered on seconds later, Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves facing not just the guards, but Counselor Thax and his loyalists. "Seize them!" Thax roared, his mandibles quivering with rage. Before anyone could move, a series of explosions rocked the palace. The floor beneath them buckled, sending Thax and his followers stumbling. Scott grabbed Queen Gaia and dove through the checkpoint, using his enhanced strength to pry open the doors to the central control room. As they secured the doors behind them, Scott's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of Sarah's team engaging Thax's forces in the corridor outside. The central control room itself was a marvel of Lurian technology, with holographic displays covering the walls and a central console pulsing with energy. Queen Gaia rushed to the main terminal, her fingers dancing over the controls. "The artifact's energy is interfering with the systems," she said, frustration evident in her voice. "I can't establish a clear communication channel." Scott joined her at the console, his eyes scanning the alien interface. To his surprise, he found he could understand much of it, another unexpected side effect of his transformation. "There," he pointed. "If we reroute power from the auxiliary systems, we might be able to boost the signal enough to cut through the interference." As they worked together to establish the communication link, the doors to the control room began to glow red, the metal warping under some intense heat. "They're burning through," Scott warned, positioning himself between Queen Gaia and the door. Just as the doors began to give way, the console in front of them lit up with a successful connection. Queen Gaia straightened, her regal bearing on full display as she prepared to address her people and salvage the future of human-Lurian relations. The doors burst open, revealing a chaotic tableau of humans and Lurians locked in conflict. Time seemed to slow as Scott took in the scene. Sarah and her team, weapons raised. Thax and his loyalists, faces contorted with rage. And in the background, Dr. Zara clutching a glowing container, her eyes wide with urgency. Queen Gaia's voice rang out, clear and commanding, as she began her address. But even as she spoke, Scott knew that the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but the future of two species. The ancient artifacts pulsed ominously, their energy building to a crescendo, and Scott braced himself for whatever came next. Next, the air crackled with tension as Scott's enhanced senses registered a new threat. A low rumble reverberated through the floor, followed by the grinding of metal against metal. "Something's wrong," Scott said, his eyes darting around the room. "The palace systems are dash." His words were cut off by a deafening screech as massive security doors began descending from the ceiling, threatening to seal off sections of the complex. Queen Gaia's antennae twitched in alarm. "The ancient failsafe mechanism," she gasped. "It's been triggered by the power failures." Scott's mind raced, calculating their options. They were mere meters away from the central control room, but the rapidly closing door would trap them on the wrong side. Without hesitation, he sprinted towards the descending barrier, ignoring the shouts behind him. Reaching the door, Scott planted his feet and thrust his hands upward. His augmented muscles strained as he fought against the enormous weight. The metal groaned in protest, slowing its descent. "Go!" he shouted to Queen Gaia. "I can't hold it long." The Lurian queen hesitated for a split second before darting under Scott's trembling arms. As soon as she was clear, Scott let out a guttural cry and gave one final push. He rolled under the door just as it slammed shut, the impact sending tremors through the floor. Panting heavily, Scott struggled to his feet. The effort had left him drained, his limbs feeling like lead. Queen Gaia steadied him, concern evident in her compound eyes. "Are you all right?" Scott nodded, forcing himself to stand straighter despite the exhaustion. "I'll be fine. We need to keep moving." As they approached the control room entrance, the sound of weapons fire echoed from nearby corridors. Lieutenant Warren's voice carried over the chaos, barking orders to her team. Counselor Thax's distinctive clicking mandibles could be heard as well, orchestrating his force's movements. The central control room door hissed open, revealing a scene of utter chaos. Holographic displays flickered erratically, projecting fragmented data across the walls. Arcs of energy danced between consoles, creating a deadly light show that illuminated the room in stroboscopic flashes. "By the ancestors," Queen Gaia whispered, her antennae drooping in dismay. "The artifact energy must be interfering with the systems." Scott's heightened senses buzzed with danger. He could feel the erratic pulses of energy coursing through the air, making his skin tingle. "We need to get to the main console," he said, scanning the room for a safe path. "Can you interface with the systems from there?" Queen Gaia nodded, her royal bearing returning despite the dire circumstances. "I believe so, but we must hurry." They began to navigate through the hazardous environment, ducking under arcs of energy and sidestepping malfunctioning equipment. Scott used his enhanced reflexes to guide them, pulling Queen Gaia to safety when a console exploded in a shower of sparks. Just as they reached the main control panel, the lights in the room flickered and died. For a heart-stopping moment, they were plunged into total darkness. Then, with a low hum, emergency lights sputtered to life, bathing the room in an eerie red glow. Queen Gaia's hands flew over the console, her movements becoming more frantic as she encountered one malfunctioning system after another. "It's no use," she said, frustration evident in her voice. The artifact's energy has corrupted too many systems. I can't dash. She stopped mid-sentence, her entire body going rigid. Scott watched in alarm as her compound eyes began to glow with an otherworldly light. Your Majesty, he said, reaching out to her. What's happening? Before she could respond, the doors to the control room burst open. Lieutenant Warren and her team poured in from one side, their weapons raised. From the other entrance, Counselor Thax and his loyalists appeared, mandibles clicking furiously. Stand down, Warren shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. This situation is under control. Thax let out a harsh, clicking laugh. You humans have no authority here. This is Lurian business. As the two factions faced off, Scott noticed movement from a third doorway. Dr. Zara and Lyra rushed in, followed by a group of young Lurian scientists. Dr. Zara clutched a glowing container, her face a mask of perseverance. We have the stabilizing agent, she called out. But it's not enough for the entire palace. We need to decide how to distribute it. The room erupted into a cacophony of shouting and clicking as humans and Lurians argued over the best course of action. Scott, overwhelmed by the sensory input from his enhanced hearing, struggled to make sense of it all. Suddenly, Queen Gaia's voice cut through the noise, silencing everyone. I understand now, she said, her voice resonating with an otherworldly quality. Her eyes still glowed with that strange light as she turned to face the assembled groups. The artifacts, she continued, they're not just relics. They're a key to our past and our future. They've shown me a vision of what could be. As all eyes turned to the Lurian queen, the artifacts throughout the palace pulsed with renewed intensity. The very air seemed to vibrate with potential, and Scott felt as if they were standing on the precipice of something momentous. In that charged moment, with multiple factions poised for conflict and the fate of two species hanging in the balance, Queen Gaia prepared to share her vision. The next few minutes would determine whether this crisis would end in unprecedented cooperation or devastating war. Conflict or devastating war. The tension in the room was palpable as all eyes fixed on Queen Gaia, her form radiating an otherworldly aura. Before she could speak, the room plunged into darkness. The sudden absence of light was absolute, leaving everyone momentarily disoriented. Scott's enhanced senses picked up the sounds of shuffling feet and nervous breathing around him. As quickly as it had vanished, light returned to the room in the form of a dim, red emergency glow. Scott blinked, his eyes adjusting to see Queen Gaia still at the console, her expression a mixture of awe and confusion. The moment of stillness shattered as the sealed doors burst open with a thunderous crash. Lieutenant Sarah Warren and her team rushed in, weapons at the ready. From another entrance, Counselor Thax and his loyalists poured into the room, their mandibles clicking furiously. Everyone, stand down, Warren shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Thax's harsh, clicking laugh echoed off the walls. You have no authority here, human. In a split second, the room erupted into a firefight. Energy bolts crisscrossed the air, leaving trails of ionized particles in their wake. Scott reacted instinctively, diving towards Queen Gaia and pulling her behind a fallen console for cover. Are you all right? He asked, his body shielding her from stray shots. The Queen nodded, her antennae twitching with agitation. Scott, we must stop this madness. The artifacts, they've shown me dash. Her words were cut short as a stray energy bolt struck nearby, showering them with sparks. Scott peered over the console, assessing the situation. The room had devolved into chaos, with both human and Lurian factions taking cover behind various pieces of equipment. Suddenly, a small maintenance hatch in the floor popped open. Dr. Zara's head emerged, followed quickly by Lyra and a young Lurian scientist Scott recognized as Vex. They scrambled into the room, clutching a glowing container between them. "We have the stabilizing agent," Dr. Zara called out, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. As if in response to their arrival, the room's energy field intensified. Arcs of crackling power leapt between consoles, causing weapons to malfunction. Both humans and Lurians cried out in surprise as their guns sparked and sputtered, firing erratically. Taking advantage of the confusion, Scott leapt into action. With a burst of superhuman speed, he vaulted over the console and charged towards Counselor Thax. The Lurian politician barely had time to react before Scott tackled him, sending them both crashing to the ground. As they grappled, Queen Gaia made her move. She rushed to a partially functioning console, her fingers flying over the controls. The room's holographic displays flickered to life, projecting distorted images of Lurian history and the mating ritual. "Listen to me, all of you," Queen Gaia's voice boomed through the palace's communication system. "The artifacts have revealed the truth about our past, about the true purpose of the mating ritual." Her words caused a momentary lull in the fighting. Even as Scott pinned Thax to the ground, he found himself captivated by the images swirling above them. The Queen continued, her voice filled with urgency. "Our ancestors created the ritual not as a test of dominance, but as a means of promoting genetic diversity and fostering peaceful relations with other species." Before anyone could fully process this revelation, a new threat emerged. The palace's autonomous security drones, still operating under Thax's earlier commands, swarmed into the control room. Their weapons powered up with an ominous hum, forcing both human and Lurian factions to scramble for cover. "Dr. Zara, the stabilizing agent," Scott shouted, ducking under a barrage of drone fire. Understanding dawned on the scientist's face. With a nod to Lyra and Vex, she rushed to the room's ventilation system. As Scott and the others provided covering fire against the drones, Dr. Zara released a stabilizing agent into the air circulation. The effect was almost immediate. A wave of calm seemed to wash over the room as the toxic atmosphere began to neutralize. The security drones, their systems affected by the changing air composition, began to malfunction and drop from the air. In the sudden quiet, Queen Gaia's voice rang out once more. "This is our chance for peace, for understanding between our species. We must seize it." Lieutenant Warren, her weapon lowered, nodded in agreement. "Stand down," she ordered her team. "Let's hear them out." Many of Thax's loyalists, their persistence shaken by the Queen's words and the malfunctioning drones, began to lower their weapons as well. Vex and his team of young Lurian scientists seized the opportunity, working feverishly to restore power to the central control room. As systems came back online, Queen Gaia accessed the palace's main communication array. With Scott by her side, she broadcast an urgent message to the approaching human fleet, explaining the situation and the potential for peaceful resolution. The control room fell silent as they awaited a response. After what felt like an eternity, a reply came through. Colonel James Harper's voice filled the room. "Message received, Your Majesty. We're halting our advance. Let's talk." A collective sigh of relief swept through the assembled humans and Lurians. As the immediate threat of violence subsided, the true nature of the ancient artifacts began to reveal itself. The energy pulses, now stabilized, coalesced into a shimmering holographic projection. Scott watched in awe as a message from the Lurians' ancestors played out before them. It spoke of the original purpose of the mating ritual, of the importance of genetic diversity, and of the potential for peaceful coexistence with other spacefaring races. As the message faded, Scott turned to Queen Gaia. Their eyes met, and in that moment, they both realized that their connection, their bond, was at the heart of this newfound understanding between their species. The stabilizing agent, while effective in neutralizing the crisis, had unforeseen effects on both Scott's enhanced physiology and Queen Gaia's Lurian biology. As they stood together, They could feel a unique connection forming between them, one that neither fully understood but both recognized as vitally important. With the immediate danger past, the real work was just beginning. The control room buzzed with activity as humans and Lurians alike began the delicate process of diplomacy. Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves at the center of it all, their relationship now a symbol of the potential future that lay ahead. As negotiations began in earnest, Scott couldn't help but wonder about the challenges that still lay ahead. The revelation about the mating ritual had shaken Lurian society to its core, and the political ramifications were yet to be fully understood. And then there was the matter of his own transformation and the evolving connection he shared with Queen Gaia. One thing was certain. The future of both species now hung in the balance, and the path forward would require courage, understanding, and a willingness to challenge centuries of mistrust and misunderstanding. Mistrust and conflict. As the tense atmosphere in the control room began to ease, Queen Gaia took charge of the situation. "We must act quickly to prevent further misunderstandings," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of her newfound wisdom. "I call for an emergency council meeting. Lieutenant Warren, Dr. Zara, Lyra, your presence is required. Scott, you too." The group made their way to a grand chamber adjacent to the control room. As they entered, Scott's enhanced vision took in the holographic displays adorning the walls, showcasing the rich tapestry of Lurian civilization. The images flickered and shifted, as if struggling to incorporate the newfound truths about their history. As the council members took their seats around a large oval table, Scott felt a strange sensation wash over him. His senses seemed to sharpen even further, and he became acutely aware of the emotional states of those around him. His gaze locked with Queen Gaia's, and he felt a surge of empathy and understanding flow between them. Dr. Zara cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. "I've analyzed the effects of the stabilizing agent," she began, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "It appears to have created a unique biochemical bond between Scott and Queen Gaia. This bond is effectively initiating the process of biological synchronization mentioned in the ancient records." A murmur of surprise rippled through the council. Scott felt a wave of shock emanate from those around him, followed by a surge of curiosity and hope. Lieutenant Warren leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "What does this mean for our negotiations with the human fleet?" As if on cue, a holographic display flickered to life, showing the stern face of Colonel James Harper. "I demand a full explanation of the events that have transpired," he said, his voice tight with concern. "And I need assurances of Lieutenant Scott's safety." Queen Gaia rose, her antennae twitching slightly as she addressed the human commander. "Colonel Harper, I assure you that Lieutenant Scott is not only safe, but is playing a crucial role in forging a new understanding between our species." As the Queen spoke, Scott felt a sudden intensification of their connection. He struggled to focus on the diplomatic proceedings, acutely aware of Queen Gaia's every movement and emotion. The council chamber doors slid open, and a group of guards entered, escorting a subdued Counselor Thax. The room tensed at his arrival, but Queen Gaia raised a hand to calm the assembly. "Counselor Thax," she said, her voice firm but not unkind, "your actions have caused great harm, but they have also led us to important truths. As a demonstration of our commitment to peace and understanding, I propose that you be sent as part of a Lurian delegation to Earth." Thax's mandibles clicked in surprise, his compound eyes widening. "Your Majesty, This is not a punishment," Queen Gaia continued, "but an opportunity for growth and learning." As the council debated the merits of this proposal, Scott found his attention drawn to the window. Outside, he could see crowds gathering in the streets of the capital city. Some carried signs celebrating the new era of cooperation, while others protested against what they saw as a threat to Lurian tradition. Lyra's voice cut through Scott's distraction. "The palace's systems have been permanently altered by the artifact's energy emissions," she reported. This change offers incredible possibilities for integrating human and Lurian technologies. The council erupted into excited discussion, but Scott found it increasingly difficult to focus. The biochemical bond between him and Queen Gaia seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. He caught her eye across the table, and a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. As the meeting progressed, a bold plan began to take shape. The council proposed reviving the original intent of the mating ritual as a symbol of peace and cooperation between species. All eyes turned to Scott and Queen Gaia. "You too," Dr. Zara said, her voice filled with awe, "could be the first participants in this new era of the ritual." Scott's heart raced as he considered the implications. He looked at Queen Gaia, sensing her mix of excitement and apprehension. The weight of their potential roles as symbols of this new alliance settled upon them both. As night fell on Luria Prime, the emergency council meeting finally adjourned. Security measures around the palace relaxed, allowing humans and Lurians to mingle more freely. Scott felt drained from the day's events, yet energized by the connection he shared with Queen Gaia. "Walk with me," she said softly, leading him towards a private garden within the palace grounds. As they entered the garden, Scott gasped in wonder. Bioluminescent Lurian flora surrounded them, casting a soft, ethereal glow. The plants seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats, responding to their presence. Queen Gaia turned to face Scott, her compound eyes reflecting the shimmering light around them. "Scott," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "what we're feeling, this connection between us, it's unprecedented." Scott nodded, struggling to find words that could adequately express the intensity of his emotions. "I've never experienced anything like this," he admitted. "It's as if I can sense your every thought, your every feeling." As they stood there, surrounded by the glowing flora, the physical and emotional aspects of their bond began to manifest more strongly. Scott felt drawn to Queen Gaia, not just by physical attraction, but by a deep, almost spiritual connection that transcended species. Their hands, human fingers and Lurian appendages, intertwined. The garden around them seemed to pulse more brightly, responding to the energy between them. As they drew closer, both Scott and Queen Gaia knew that this moment marked not just a new chapter in their personal lives, but in the future of human-Lurian relations. The challenges ahead were numerous and complex, but in this moment, surrounded by the beauty of the Lurian night, hope blossomed like the luminescent flowers around them. The path forward would require courage, understanding, and a willingness to challenge centuries of mistrust and conflict. But as Scott and Queen Gaia stood together in the garden, their unprecedented bond growing stronger, the future seemed filled with infinite possibilities. Possibilities. As Scott and Queen Gaia stood together in the garden, their unprecedented bond growing stronger, the future seemed filled with infinite potential. The bioluminescent flora pulsed softly around them, its rhythm syncing with their heartbeats. As the night deepened, Scott felt a tingling sensation spread across his skin, while Queen Gaia blinked rapidly, her compound eyes shimmering in the dim light. When dawn broke, casting its golden rays across Luria Prime, Scott and Queen Gaia emerged from their secluded garden. The palace staff, already bustling with activity, paused as the couple passed. Whispers and curious glances followed in their wake. "Your Majesty," a young Lurian attendant gasped, her antennae twitching in surprise. "Your eyes." Queen Gaia caught her reflection in a nearby window. Her compound eyes had undergone a subtle transformation, taking on a more human-like quality. She turned to Scott, noticing for the first time the faint iridescent sheen that now covered his skin, reminiscent of Lurian biology. "It seems our connection runs deeper than we imagined," Scott murmured, running a hand over his arm in wonder. Their private moment was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Zara, flanked by Lyra and a team of human scientists. "Fascinating," Dr. Zara breathed, her eyes wide as she took in their altered appearances. We need to begin tests immediately. The implications of this biological synchronization are enormous. As they made their way to the hastily assembled research facility within the palace, the corridors buzzed with activity. Lurian officials hurried past, their mandibles clicking rapidly as they discussed the upcoming announcement from the High Council. In the makeshift lab, Scott and Queen Gaia submitted to a battery of tests. Dr. Zara and her team worked feverishly, analyzing blood samples and conducting scans of their altered physiologies. The stabilizing agent appears to be acting as a catalyst, Lyra explained, her voice filled with excitement as she pored over the data. It's facilitating a gradual biological synchronization between your species. This is beyond anything we've ever seen before. As the morning progressed, news of their transformation spread through the palace like wildfire. The Lurian High Council convened an emergency session, debating the implications of this unprecedented development. Outside the palace walls, the capital city of Luria Prime was awaking to a new reality. The streets filled with curious Lurians, their antennae waving in agitation as they discussed the rumors spreading from the palace. At midday, the Lurian High Council made their official announcement. Holographic projectors throughout the city flickered to life, displaying the regal form of the council spokesmember. Citizens of Luria Prime, the spokesmember began, her voice resonating through the streets. Today marks the dawn of a new era in our history. We are pleased to announce the commencement of a formal alliance between the Lurian Empire and the human race. A collective gasp rippled through the crowds gathered in the city squares. The spokesmember continued, to symbolize this new era of cooperation, a grand ceremony will be held. At its center will be the union of our beloved Queen Gaia and Lieutenant Scott of Earth. The announcement sent shockwaves through both Lurian and human societies. In the palace, a flurry of diplomatic activity erupted as officials scrambled to prepare for the implications of this bold move. Colonel James Harper, who had just arrived on Luria Prime with a small human delegation, strode purposefully through the palace corridors. His face was a mask of professional neutrality, but his eyes betrayed a mix of concern and curiosity. "I need to see Lieutenant Scott immediately," he demanded, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. As Harper was led to the research facility, Scott and Queen Gaia were grappling with the reality of their new roles. The weight of their responsibility as symbols of this unprecedented alliance settled heavily upon them. "Are you ready for this?" Queen Gaia asked softly, her newly altered eyes searching Scott's face. Before Scott could respond, the door slid open, revealing Colonel Harper. The seasoned officer's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he took in Scott's changed appearance. "Lieutenant," Harper began, his voice gruff but not unkind, "I think it's time we had a talk about your new situation." As Scott prepared to face his superior officer, Queen Gaia squeezed his hand reassuringly. Their shared touch sent a surge of warmth through their bond, a reminder of the connection that now tied their fates and the fates of their species together. Outside the palace, the city of Luria Prime buzzed with anticipation and uncertainty. As news of the impending ceremony spread, so too did the questions and concerns of both humans and Lurians. The path ahead was uncharted, filled with both promise and peril, and at its center stood Scott and Queen Gaia, their transforming bodies a living symbol of the changes to come. Come, the weight of their new roles and the implications of their unprecedented bonds settled upon them as they prepared to face the challenges ahead. As the days passed, Scott and Queen Gaia's biochemical bond continued to intensify, bringing with it startling physical changes. Scott's skin began to develop intricate, luminescent patterns that pulsed with a soft glow reminiscent of Lurian bioluminescence. Queen Gaia's compound eyes, once a uniform shade, now displayed a range of human-like colors that shifted with her emotions. These visible transformations created a stir throughout the palace. Lurian attendants whispered in hushed tones as the couple passed, their antennae twitching with a mix of awe and unease. Human diplomats struggled to maintain their composure, their eyes widening at the sight of Scott's altered appearance. Dr. Zara and her team worked tirelessly in their makeshift lab, analyzing data from continuous scans and tests. "The rate of biological synchronization is accelerating," she reported, her voice tight with concern. "We need to monitor this closely. There could be unforeseen health risks." As Scott and Queen Gaia submitted to yet another round of examinations, the palace buzzed with activity. The Great Hall, chosen as the venue for the upcoming alliance ceremony, was a hive of organized chaos. Human and Lurian decorators worked side by side, blending their distinct aesthetics to create a space that symbolized the merging of their cultures. Bioluminescent Lurian plants twined around Earth flora, creating breathtaking living sculptures that pulse with alien light. The air was thick with the mingled scents of both worlds, the sharp, spicy aroma of Lurian flora mixing with the sweet fragrance of Earth blossoms. Amidst the preparations, Lieutenant Sarah Warren moved with purpose, her eyes sharp and alert. She gathered her security team in a secluded corner of the palace grounds. "We've uncovered a plot," she said, her voice low and urgent. "A group of extremist Lurians calling themselves the Purist faction plans to sabotage the ceremony. They're targeting the palace's power systems." Her team leaned in, their faces grim. Warren continued, "We need to strengthen our security measures without causing alarm. I want eyes and ears everywhere. If these purists so much as twitch an antenna, I want to know about it." As Warren's team dispersed to their assigned posts, Colonel James Harper paced in his temporary office, his brow furrowed in concentration. A holographic display flickered before him, showing the stern faces of Earth's government officials. "Colonel," one of them said, "this alliance presents an unprecedented opportunity. We need you to negotiate access to Lurian biotechnology as part of the agreement. The potential advancements could be revolutionary." Harper's mind focused. "With all due respect, sir, we're in a delicate position here. Pushing too hard could jeopardize everything we've worked for." The official's eyes narrowed. "We trust you'll find a way, Colonel. The future of humanity may depend on it." As the transmission ended, Harper sank into his chair, the weight of his conflicting duties settling heavily upon him. In the heart of the capital city, crowds began to gather in the central square. Word had spread that Queen Gaia and her human consort would make their first public appearance outside the palace grounds. The atmosphere crackled with tension and excitement. Scott and Queen Gaia emerged from their transport, their altered appearances immediately drawing gasps from the assembled crowd. As they made their way to the podium, cheers and shouts of support mingled with angry cries of protest. Queen Gaia raised her hands, her multi-hued eyes scanning the crowd. "Citizens of Luria Prime," she began, her voice carrying across the square, "we stand at the threshold of a new era, an era of cooperation and understanding between our peoples." As she spoke, Scott's attention was drawn to a figure moving through the crowd. Something about their furtive movements set off alarm bells in his mind. He tensed, ready to act. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, a glint of metal visible in their hand. Without thinking, Scott moved. His body reacted with inhuman speed and strength, intercepting the attacker before they could reach the podium. The crowd erupted into chaos as Scott subdued the assailant, his luminescent skin pulsing brightly with a surge of adrenaline. Queen Gaia's guards swarmed around them, quickly taking control of the situation. As the attacker was led away, Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a look of shared understanding. The path ahead would be fraught with danger, but they would face it together. Their bond, both physical and emotional, had never felt stronger. Back at the palace, Dr. Zara awaited their return, her face etched with worry. "We need to talk," she said as soon as they entered the lab. "The changes in your physiology are accelerating faster than we anticipated. We may need to consider more." Drastic measures to stabilize your condition. Scott and Queen Gaia listened intently as Dr. Zara outlined a risky procedure involving a modified version of the stabilizing agent and the energy from the ancient artifacts. The potential dangers were clear, but so were the risks of allowing their transformation to continue unchecked. As night fell over Luria Prime, Scott and Queen Gaia retreated to the artifact chamber, seeking guidance and perhaps a solution to their rapidly changing bodies. The ancient technology pulsed with energy, reacting to their presence. They stood before the artifacts, their hands intertwined, human fingers and Lurian appendages fitting together in perfect harmony. As the energy of the chamber washed over them, they were plunged into a shared vision more vivid and extensive than any before. Images flashed before their eyes, glimpses of past interspecies alliances, the true purpose of the mating ritual, and tantalizing hints of possible futures. They saw worlds where humans and Lurians worked side by side, advancing technology and exploring the cosmos together. But they also witnessed darker possibilities, conflict, mistrust, and the dangers of unchecked integration. As they emerged from the vision, Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves changed once again, their bond deeper and more profound than ever before. They now understood the weight of the choices that lay before them, choices that would shape not only their own futures, but the destiny of both their species. With the alliance ceremony mere hours away, they knew that the decisions they made in the coming days would resonate across the galaxy for generations to come. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and possibility in equal measure. But as they stood together in the glow of the ancient artifacts, Scott and Queen Gaia were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their unprecedented bond. The vision faded, leaving Scott and Queen Gaia standing in the artifact chamber, their bodies still tingling with residual energy. They exchanged a look of profound understanding, their bond stronger than ever. "We need to prepare," Queen Gaia said softly, her multi-hued eyes reflecting perseverance. Scott nodded, his luminescent skin pulsing with a soft glow. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." As they left the chamber, the weight of their impending choices settled upon them. Little did they know that the coming hours would test their determination in ways they could never have imagined. The night before the ceremony passed in a blur of final preparations and restless anticipation. As dawn broke over Luria Prime, Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves in Dr. Zara's lab, surrounded by an array of complex equipment. "This procedure carries risks," Dr. Zara explained, her antennae twitching nervously. "But it's our best chance to stabilize your condition." Scott took a deep breath, feeling Queen Gaia's anxiety through their bond. "We understand. Let's proceed." The treatment was intense. Energy from the ancient artifacts, carefully channeled through Dr. Zara's modified stabilizing agent, coursed through their bodies. Scott gritted his teeth against the sensation, like fire in his veins. Beside him, Queen Gaia's exoskeleton vibrated with the influx of power. When it was over, they found their physiological changes had indeed slowed. But their connection had deepened beyond anything they'd experienced before. Scott could feel Queen Gaia's every breath as if it were his own, her emotions washing over him in vivid waves. "Fascinating," Dr. Zara murmured, studying her readings. "The biochemical bond has intensified significantly. You'll need time to adjust." But time was a luxury they didn't have. The ceremony loomed, and with it, the weight of two civilizations' expectations. As they left the lab, alarms suddenly blared through the palace. Lieutenant Sarah Warren's voice crackled over the comm system. "Security breach in sectors 3 and 5. All personnel on high alert." Scott and Queen Gaia rushed to the security center, where they found Warren coordinating a response team. "Purist faction," she reported grimly. "We've neutralized several explosive devices. Interrogations are ongoing, but it seems this was just the first wave of a larger planned attack." The news sent a ripple of unease through the assembled officials. Colonel Harper stepped forward, his face a mask of dedication. We need to tighten security without causing panic. The ceremony must proceed as planned. As if on cue, a junior officer burst into the room. Sir, an unidentified battlecruiser has just entered orbit. The room erupted into chaos. Lurian officials chittered in alarm, while human diplomats demanded immediate action. Harper silenced them with a sharp gesture. Calm down. Let's not jump to conclusions. A tense silence fell as they waited for further information. Minutes later, the comm system crackled to life. This is Ambassador Crosstho of the Zorn Empire. We request an immediate audience with Queen Gaia and the human known as Scott. The unexpected arrival of the Zorn threw carefully laid plans into disarray. Harper, recognizing the potential for disaster, quickly organized an impromptu meeting in a secure conference room. Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves face to face with Ambassador Crosstho, a towering reptilian figure whose scales gleamed under the harsh lighting. His vertical pupils dilated as he took in their altered appearances. Fascinating, Crosstho hissed, circling them with undisguised interest. We had heard rumors of your compatibility, but to see it with our own eyes. The negotiations that followed were tense, with the Zorn expressing concerns about the shifting balance of power in the sector. But as the talks progressed, it became clear that the Zorn were more intrigued than threatened by the human-Lurian alliance. Perhaps, Crosstho suggested, his forked tongue flicking out thoughtfully, there is room for the Zorn in this new paradigm you are creating. The implications of a potential three-way alliance sent Harper's mind blown. The stakes had just risen exponentially. As the diplomatic dance continued inside, final preparations for the ceremony were underway in the palace's central plaza. The air hummed with excitement and nervous energy. Holographic projectors were hastily installed, ready to broadcast the historic event across human and Lurian territories alike. Suddenly, a low, harmonic hum began to resonate through the palace. Scientists from both species scrambled to identify its source. Dr. Zara's eyes widened as she realized the truth. It's the artifacts, she breathed. They're reacting to the imminent union. This changes everything. As the ceremony's start time approached, Scott and Queen Gaia retreated to separate chambers for final preparations. They donned ceremonial attire that seamlessly blended human and Lurian design elements. The bioreactive materials shimmered and pulsed, reflecting their tumultuous emotions. Scott stood before a mirror, marveling at his transformed appearance. His skin glowed with intricate, ever-shifting patterns, while his eyes now held an alien depth. He could feel Queen Gaia's presence in his mind, a constant, reassuring warmth. A knock at the door startled him from his reverie. "It's time," Colonel Harper's voice called. Scott took a deep breath, steadying himself for what was to come. As he stepped out into the corridor, he felt a sudden, inexplicable urge pulling him in a different direction. Through their bond, he sensed Queen Gaia experiencing the same sensation. Without a word, they both turned and began running towards the artifact chamber. Alarms blared, but they paid them no heed. Something was calling them, insistent and undeniable. They burst into the chamber to find it awash in pulsating light. The artifacts had come alive, their energy coalescing into a swirling vortex of possibility. As Scott and Queen Gaia stood transfixed, glimpses of alternate futures flashed before their eyes. They saw themselves leading a golden age of interstellar cooperation, their union ushering in an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity. But they also witnessed darker possibilities. Worlds torn apart by fear and mistrust, where their alliance had sown the seeds of destruction. The energy enveloped them, their bodies beginning to glow as the biochemical changes accelerated once again. The palace's security systems, unable to differentiate between threat and benign anomaly, initiated a lockdown. The chamber doors sealed shut, cutting them off from the outside world. In the great hall, guests realized with growing alarm that the ceremonial couple was missing. Chaos erupted as rumors spread like wildfire. Colonel Harper and Lieutenant Warren mobilized their forces, fearing the worst. Inside the sealed chamber, Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves at a crossroads. The artifact's energy swirled around them, offering a choice: to fully embrace their transformation and become living symbols of human Lurian unity, or to reject it and maintain their original forms. They stood hand in hand, human fingers intertwined with Lurian appendages, as the weight of their decision pressed upon them. This choice would shape not only their own futures, but the destiny of both their species and potentially the entire galaxy. As alarms continued to blare and diplomatic tensions rose outside, Scott and Queen Gaia gazed into each other's eyes. In that moment, they knew what they had to do. Together, they stepped forward into the heart of the energy vortex, ready to face whatever transformations awaited them. The artifact's power surged, enveloping them completely. Their bodies began to change once more, the line between human and Lurian blurring beyond recognition. As the energy reached a fever pitch, a blinding flash of light erupted from the chamber, momentarily overloading all systems in the palace. When the light faded, the lockdown lifted, and the chamber doors slowly opened. Colonel Harper and Lieutenant Warren, leading a security team, rushed in, weapons at the ready. They stopped short at the threshold, staring in awe at the sight before them. Where Scott and Queen Gaia had stood, a single being now hovered, radiating an otherworldly energy. It was neither fully human nor Lurian, but something entirely new, a perfect synthesis of both species. As the hybrid being opened its eyes, its gaze fell upon the stunned onlookers. When it spoke, its voice resonated with the harmonics of two beings in perfect unison. "We have chosen," it said, the words echoing with profound implications. "And now, the real work begins." "Begins," the hybrid being continued, its voice resonating with newfound power and purpose. Colonel Harper lowered his weapon, his eyes wide with astonishment. "Scott? Queen Gaia? Is that you?" The being nodded, a gentle smile playing across its features. "We are both, and yet more. We have chosen to fully embrace our transformation, to become living symbols of human Lurian unity." As the hybrid being spoke, the artifact's energy began to subside, revealing the true extent of the transformation. Scott's body now exhibited a perfect blend of human and Lurian characteristics. His skin shimmered with intricate bioluminescent patterns, pulsing in harmony with his breath. His eyes, once a deep brown, now held the multifaceted depth of Lurian vision, reflecting the world in ways he had never before imagined. Queen Gaia's form had undergone an equally dramatic change. Her previously rigid exoskeleton had softened, taking on a more fluid, adaptable structure. Her movements were graceful and smooth, blending the best aspects of both species' physicality. Lieutenant Warren stepped forward, her hand instinctively reaching for her communicator. "Sir, we need to inform the guests. The ceremony dash." "The ceremony will proceed," the hybrid being interrupted, its voice calm but firm. "Our transformation is the ultimate expression of the alliance we seek to forge." As they made their way through the palace corridors, the ancient artifacts lining the walls began to resonate in harmony. The sound grew, a melodious hum that seemed to vibrate through the very air itself. In the great hall, tension had reached a fever pitch. Ambassador Crosthall paced back and forth, his scales filled with agitation. "This delay is unacceptable," he hissed to a nervous-looking Lurian official. "The Zorn Empire does not appreciate being kept waiting." Suddenly, the doors to the hall swung open. A hush fell over the assembled guests as the hybrid being entered, flanked by Colonel Harper and Lieutenant Warren. Ambassador Crosthall's reptilian eyes widened, his forked tongue flicking out in surprise. Fascinating, he murmured, moving closer to inspect the transformed couple. Truly remarkable. As the hybrid being took its place at the center of the hall, the resonance from the artifacts intensified. The air seemed to shimmer, and guests from all species present found themselves experiencing a strange sense of unity and connection. The ceremonial rituals began, a seamless blend of human and Lurian traditions. As the hybrid being moved through the carefully choreographed steps, its skin pulsed with patterns of light that seemed to reach out and touch the very hearts of those watching. Ambassador Crossthow, typically aloof and suspicious, found himself oddly moved by the display. He leaned in to whisper to his aide, "Perhaps there is more to this alliance than we initially believed." Outside the palace, the activated Lurian technologies began to interface with human systems present on the planet. Holographic displays flickered to life across the city, showing impossible new star charts and designs for ships capable of traversing vast distances in the blink of an eye. Dr. Zara, monitoring the situation from her makeshift lab, gasped as her instruments registered the unprecedented energy readings. "This is beyond anything we could have imagined," she muttered, her antennae twitching with excitement. As the ceremony reached its climax, a wave of energy pulsed outward from the hybrid being. It washed over the assembled guests, then spread beyond the palace walls, racing across the surface of Luria Prime. For a brief moment, the entire planet glowed with a soft, otherworldly light. In orbit, the Zorn battlecruiser's sensors went haywire. The ship's commander barked orders, unsure whether to interpret the energy surge as a threat or a marvel. Back in the Great Hall, the ceremony concluded, the hybrid being turned to face the stunned audience, its voice carrying easily to every corner of the room. Today marks not just a union of two individuals or two species, but the beginning of a new era of cooperation and understanding. We stand before you as living proof that our differences can be our greatest strength. Ambassador Crossthow stepped forward, his usual aggression tempered by a newfound sense of respect. The Zorn Empire has witnessed your power and your unity. I would like to discuss the possibility of joining this alliance. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Colonel Harper exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Warren, both realizing the monumental implications of this unexpected development. As the diplomatic reception began, the hybrid being found itself at the center of a whirlwind of questions, congratulations, and curious stares. It navigated the complex social dynamics with grace, its dual nature allowing it to bridge cultural gaps with ease. Dr. Zara pushed her way through the crowd, her eyes shining with scientific curiosity. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "I've made a discovery that you need to hear." The hybrid being turned its attention to the Lurian scientist, sensing the importance of her words. Dr. Zara leaned in close, her voice low but intense. "The biological changes you've undergone, they've rendered you capable of procreation. Despite your different species origins, you could potentially produce offspring. This changes everything we thought we knew about interspecies biology." The hybrid being absorbed this information, feeling the weight of its implications. As it looked out over the assembled dignitaries, it sensed both the immense potential and the challenges that lay ahead. The union of human and Lurian was just the beginning, with the Zorn now expressing interest and the possibility of interspecies reproduction. The galaxy stood on the brink of a transformation as profound as their own. But even as hope and excitement filled the air, shadows lurked at the edges of the celebration. In the darker corners of Luria Prime, members of the Purist faction gathered, their anger fueled by what they saw as a betrayal of Lurian heritage. They began to whisper of more drastic measures, their plans taking shape in the dim light of underground hideouts. The hybrid being, unaware of these brewing threats, continued to move through the reception, its very presence a testament to the new future it embodied. Each step forward into this uncharted territory brought with it new questions, new possibilities, and new dangers. The journey that had begun with a simple diplomatic mission had now grown into something that would reshape the very fabric of galactic society. The hybrid being's words echoed through the Great Hall, reverberating with the promise of a new era. As the diplomatic reception continued, Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Dignitaries from across the galaxy pressed forward, eager to engage with this living symbol of interspecies unity. Ambassador Crosthall, his initial skepticism replaced by cautious interest, engaged in intense discussions with Colonel Harper and Lieutenant Warren. The Zorn's unexpected openness to alliance talks sent ripples of excitement and concern through the assembled crowd. As the night wore on, Scott and Queen Gaia retreated to a quiet corner of the palace gardens. The bioluminescent patterns on their skin pulsed softly in the darkness, casting a gentle glow on the exotic Lurian flora surrounding them. "We need to talk about what this means for us," Scott said, his multifaceted eyes searching Queen Gaia's face. "For our future." Queen Gaia nodded, her newly fluid form shifting slightly. "Our transformation has opened doors we never imagined, but it has also created new challenges." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Zara, her antennae twitching with scarcely controlled excitement. "I apologize for the intrusion," she said, bowing slightly, "but I've made some fascinating discoveries about your new physiology. With your permission, I'd like to conduct a series of non-invasive tests." Over the next few days, the palace became a hub of intense diplomatic and scientific activity. Representatives from various alien races arrived in a steady stream, filling the halls with a cacophony of languages and the rustle of unfamiliar appendages. Scott and Queen Gaia submitted to Dr. Zara's tests, their bodies scanned by an array of advanced Lurian and human medical devices. As they lay side by side in the laboratory, Scott felt a surge of emotion through their empathic bond. "You're worried," he said, reaching out to take Queen Gaia's hand. She squeezed his fingers, her touch sending a ripple of bioluminescence across his skin. "We have a responsibility to our people, to this alliance, but I fear we may be losing ourselves in the process." Before Scott could respond, Dr. Zara burst into the room, her eyes wide with excitement. "The results are extraordinary," she exclaimed. "Your physiological changes go far beyond mere appearance. You've developed a shared immune system, capable of resisting a wide range of diseases from both species." The implications of this discovery spread rapidly. Within hours, a joint human-Lurian research team was assembled to explore the potential medical applications of Scott and Queen Gaia's new biology. As news of the successful ceremony and subsequent breakthroughs spread across the galaxy, Luria Prime found itself flooded with visitors. Human artists, scientists, and diplomats arrived in droves, eager to immerse themselves in Lurian culture. The planet's spaceports, unused to such high volumes of traffic, quickly became overwhelmed. Scott and Queen Gaia, despite their new status as diplomatic figureheads, rolled up their sleeves to help manage the influx. They spent long hours in meetings with Lurian officials, working to expand infrastructure and accommodate the sudden surge of interstellar guests. One evening, as they supervised the construction of a new spaceport terminal, Scott felt a wave of fatigue wash over him. He turned to Queen Gaia, only to find her already looking at him with concern. "You felt it too," he said, not a question but a statement of fact. Their empathic bond had grown stronger, allowing them to sense each other's emotions with increasing clarity. Queen Gaia nodded. "We need rest, but there's so much to be done." As they made their way back to the palace, they passed a group of Lurian engineers huddled around one of the ancient artifacts. The object pulsed with energy, its surface covered in shifting patterns of light. "Another breakthrough," Queen Gaia murmured, her voice tinged with awe. The artifact seemed to be revealing new secrets every day. Indeed, the activated artifacts had become a source of revolutionary advancements. Lurian and human engineers worked side by side, deciphering the ancient technology and applying it to create new, highly efficient power systems. However, not all reactions to these rapid changes were positive. As Scott and Queen Gaia entered the palace, they were met by Lieutenant Warren, her face grim. "We've received reports of Purist faction activity in the outer regions," she said, her voice low. "They're regrouping, possibly planning something big." Scott felt a chill run down his spine, his skin darkening in response to the sudden tension. Queen Gaia placed a comforting hand on his arm, her touch sending a wave of calm through their bond. "We knew there would be resistance," she said, her voice steady. "We must remain vigilant, but we cannot let fear derail our progress." As they discussed security measures with Lieutenant Warren, a commotion arose from the nearby conference room. The doors burst open, revealing Ambassador Crosthall engaged in a heated argument with a group of human and Lurian officials. "The Zorn Empire has much to offer this alliance," Crosthall hissed, his scaled face flushed with anger. "You cannot simply dismiss us based on past conflicts." Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a glance, their shared thoughts clear without the need for words. They stepped forward, their unique presence immediately drawing the attention of the quarreling parties. "Perhaps," Scott began, his voice resonating with the harmonics of their dual nature, "we need to approach this from a different angle." As night fell over Luria Prime, Scott and Queen Gaia stood on the balcony of their private chambers, looking out over the bustling capital. The city glowed with the light of new technologies, a testament to the rapid changes sweeping their world. "We've come so far," Queen Gaia said softly, leaning into Scott's embrace. "But I can't help feeling that our greatest challenges still lie ahead." Scott nodded, his gaze drawn to the stars above. Among those distant points of light lay Earth, the Zorn Empire, and countless other worlds that would be affected by the decisions they made here on Luria Prime. As they stood there, united in body and mind, the weight of their responsibilities settled upon them. The future of not just their two species, but potentially the entire galaxy, rested in their hands. And somewhere out there, hidden in the shadows, the Purist faction was plotting its next move. The hybrid being that was Scott and Queen Gaia took a deep breath, their shared lungs filling with the cool night air. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The real work of forging a lasting alliance had only just begun. The real work of forging a lasting alliance had only just begun, and it would soon face its first major test. As the days passed, Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves grappling with unexpected physical changes. During a meeting with Lurian officials, Scott suddenly doubled over, a wave of discomfort rippling through his body. Queen Gaia, linked to him through their shared physiology, felt the sensation echo within her. Dr. Zara, who had been monitoring their condition closely, rushed to their side. "This is concerning," she said, her antennae twitching nervously. "The rate of cellular changes is accelerating. We need to run more tests immediately." In the medical bay, Scott and Queen Gaia lay side by side as Dr. Zara's team conducted a battery of scans. The hybrid couple exchanged worried glances, their skin pulsing with patterns that reflected their anxiety. "The results are troubling," Dr. Zara announced, her eyes fixed on a holographic display. "Your shared physiology is undergoing further mutations. It's causing cellular instability that could lead to more severe complications if left untreated." Scott sat up, wincing slightly. "What do you recommend?" "A series of specialized treatments," Dr. Zara replied. "They should help stabilize your condition. However, it will require multiple sessions over several days. I strongly advise postponing any major decisions or activities until we've completed the treatment course." Queen Gaia's form rippled with concern. "But what about the interstellar exploration mission? We were supposed to make a decision this week." Before Dr. Zara could respond, an alarm blared through the medical bay. Colonel Harper's voice crackled over the intercom, tension evident in his tone. "We have a situation. Multiple attacks reported across Luria Prime. Purist faction activity confirmed. All personnel to battle stations." Scott and Queen Gaia jumped to their feet, ignoring Dr. Zara's protests. They rushed to the command center, where a holographic map of Luria Prime displayed numerous red dots indicating attack sites. "They've hit our joint research facilities and diplomatic outposts," Lieutenant Warren reported, her face grim. "Casualties reported on both sides." Colonel Harper turned to Scott and Queen Gaia. "We need to respond quickly and decisively. I'm mobilizing a joint human-Lurian task force to counter this threat." Queen Gaia nodded. "Agreed. Lieutenant Warren, I want you to lead this operation. Your experience with both human and Lurian tactics will be crucial." As plans were made and orders given, Scott felt another wave of discomfort wash over him. He gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. Queen Gaia squeezed his hand, sending a pulse of support through their bond. "We can't afford to be sidelined now," Scott whispered to her. "Our people need us." Queen Gaia nodded in agreement. "We'll postpone the treatments for now. The crisis takes priority." Over the next few hours, reports flooded in from across the planet. The Purist faction had launched a coordinated series of attacks, targeting symbols of human-Lurian cooperation. Fires raged in research labs, diplomatic compounds lay in ruins, and the streets of major cities echoed with the sound of energy weapon fire. Lieutenant Warren's task force moved swiftly, combining human combat tactics with advanced Lurian technology. They managed to repel several Purist assaults, but the situation remained volatile. As night fell, Scott and Queen Gaia called an emergency meeting of the Alliance's governing council. The chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from both species argued about how to respond to the crisis. Ambassador Zorai, a senior Lurian diplomat known for his skepticism of the Alliance, rose to speak. "These attacks prove what I've been saying all along," he declared, his voice carrying across the room. "Lurian society is not ready for such rapid changes. We must suspend the Alliance immediately for the safety of all." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Scott felt a surge of frustration, amplified by the discomfort of his changing physiology. He stood, his skin glowing with intensity. "Suspending the Alliance is exactly what the Purists want," he argued. "We can't let fear drive us apart. Instead, we need to address the root causes of their support." Queen Gaia joined him, their voices blending in perfect harmony as they outlined a plan for comprehensive economic and social integration. "We must show those who feel left behind that this alliance benefits all Lurians, not just a select few," she explained. As the council debated, Lieutenant Warren burst into the chamber, her expression a mix of triumph and concern. "We've uncovered evidence linking Ambassador Zorai to the Purist faction," she announced. "He's been providing them with classified information and resources." The room erupted in chaos. Ambassador Zorai sputtered denials, but the evidence presented by Lieutenant Warren was damning. As security personnel moved to detain him, Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a look of dogged persistence. "We need to act now, before the situation spirals further out of control," Scott said, his voice low but firm. Queen Gaia nodded, understanding flowing between them. "We'll lead a diplomatic mission into Purist territory ourselves. It's risky, but our unique status gives us the best chance of opening a dialogue." Colonel Harper and Dr. Zara both objected strenuously, citing the dangers to their safety and health. But Scott and Queen Gaia stood firm in their decision. As preparations for the mission began, Dr. Zara approached them with startling news. "Your latest tests revealed something extraordinary," she said, her eyes wide with excitement. "Your shared physiology has developed the ability to absorb and neutralize certain types of energy weapons. It could provide crucial protection during your mission." Scott and Queen Gaia absorbed this information, feeling a mix of awe and apprehension at the continued evolution of their shared form. As dawn broke over Luria Prime, Scott and Queen Gaia boarded a diplomatic shuttle, ready to embark on their perilous mission into Purist-controlled territory. The fate of the Human-Lurian alliance hung in the balance as the shuttle's engines flared to life. Behind them, Lieutenant Warren's task force continued their investigation, working to gather enough evidence to dismantle the Purist leadership. And in the depths of the palace, the ancient artifacts pulsed with new energy, their mysteries intertwining with the evolving story of Scott and Queen Gaia's transformation. The shuttle lifted off, carrying the hybrid couple towards an uncertain future. As they broke through Luria Prime's atmosphere, Scott and Queen Gaia clasped hands, their shared form glowing with drive. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, for the sake of both their peoples and the future of the galaxy. Alliance. The shuttle's sleek form cut through the atmosphere, leaving behind the glittering cityscape of Luria Prime. As they entered Purist-controlled airspace, Scott felt a sudden jolt. The shuttle's lights flickered, and warning alarms blared throughout the cabin. "We're losing power," Queen Gaia said, her fingers dancing over the control panel. "All systems are failing." Scott gripped the controls, fighting to keep the craft level as it plummeted towards the dense Lurian forest below. Brace for impact. The shuttle crashed through the canopy, branches and leaves scraping against the hull. With a bone-jarring thud, it came to rest in a small clearing, steam hissing from its damaged engines. Scott and Queen Gaia extricated themselves from the wreckage, their shared form pulsing with residual adrenaline. A quick survey revealed that their communication devices had been destroyed in the crash. "We can't abandon the mission," Scott said, his eyes scanning the alien forest around them. "We'll have to continue on foot." Queen Gaia nodded, her skin rippling with tenacity. "Agreed. Our unique physiology should give us an advantage in this terrain." As they trekked through the dense undergrowth, Scott and Queen Gaia's senses heightened. The forest was alive with unfamiliar sounds and scents, each step bringing new sensory information. After several hours of careful navigation, they stumbled upon a well-worn path. Queen Gaia crouched, examining the ground. "These tracks. They're recent and numerous." Scott's skin darkened with concern. "A Purist patrol?" "Perhaps," Queen Gaia replied. "But this level of activity suggests something more. There could be a base nearby." They followed the path cautiously, their shared form adapting to blend with the surrounding foliage. As they crested a small hill, they saw it, a sprawling compound nestled in a valley, its metallic structures a stark contrast to the lush forest. "We need to get closer," Scott whispered. "Find out what they're planning." As they approached the compound's perimeter, something strange happened. Scott felt a sudden rush of foreign emotions, anxiety, excitement, and a deep-seated anger. He glanced at Queen Gaia, seeing the same confusion in her eyes. "Are you feeling that?" he asked. She nodded. "It's like I can sense the Purists. Their emotions, their presence." They paused, focusing on this new ability. Gradually, they began to discern individual presences. Guards patrolling the fence line, workers moving about inside the compound. "This could be invaluable," Scott said, his mind racing with tactical possibilities. "We can avoid detection, maybe even find a way inside." Using their newfound empathic sense, Scott and Queen Gaia navigated around patrol routes and security cameras. They slipped through a gap in the fence, their shared form contorting in ways that would have been impossible for either species alone. Inside the compound, they moved silently through shadowed corridors, their skin adapting to match the metallic surfaces around them. They passed by oblivious Purist soldiers, feeling waves of misguided zeal and fear radiating from them. As they neared the center of the facility, they overheard a conversation that made their blood run cold. "The attack on the Capitol is set for tomorrow," a gruff voice said. "Our agents are in place, and the weapons are primed. The Alliance will fall before they know what hit them. Scott and Queen Gaia exchange a look of alarm. They had to warn the Alliance, but how? Their communication devices were destroyed, and they were deep in enemy territory. They continued deeper into the compound, searching for a way to send a message. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a pair of Purist guards. Without thinking, Scott and Queen Gaia acted in perfect unison. They raised their hands, channeling the energy-absorbing ability Dr. Zara had discovered. The guards' weapons discharged, but the energy dissipated harmlessly around the hybrid couple. Before the guards could react further, Scott and Queen Gaia surged forward. Their shared form moved with inhuman speed and grace, incapacitating the guards with precise strikes. The communication center, Queen Gaia said, accessing the guards' memories through their empathic link. It's not far. They raced through the corridors, using their abilities to avoid detection. When they reached the communication center, they found it empty, a stroke of luck. Scott approached the main console, his hands hovering over the unfamiliar controls. Suddenly, he felt a strange connection forming between his mind and the computer system. I think I can interface with it, he said, wonder in his voice. Queen Gaia joined him, their shared consciousness merging with the Purist network. Information flooded their minds, troop movements, weapon schematics, and damning evidence of Ambassador Zorai's involvement. We need to broadcast this, Queen Gaia said. To everyone. As Scott began to compose the message, alarms blared throughout the facility. Their presence had been detected. Hurry, Queen Gaia urged, her attention split between the approaching guards and the vital information they were uncovering. Scott's fingers flew over the console, preparing a data burst that would expose the Purist plans and Zorai's betrayal. Just as he hit the transmit button, the door to the communication center exploded inward. Purist soldiers poured into the room, energy weapons trained on the hybrid couple. Scott and Queen Gaia raised their hands, creating a shimmering barrier of absorbed energy. As the soldiers opened fire, Scott and Queen Gaia knew their mission was nowhere near the end. The message was sent, but they still had to escape and make it back to the capital. With Purist forces closing in and their own bodies continuing to evolve in unexpected ways, they prepared for the fight of their lives. Energy blasts ricocheted off their protective barrier, filling the air with a cacophony of sound and light. We need to move, Scott shouted over the din. The message is sent, but we have to get back to the capital. Queen Gaia nodded, her eyes scanning the room for an escape route. Spotting a ventilation shaft in the ceiling, she pointed. There! Working in perfect synchronization, they leapt upward, their shared form contorting to fit through the narrow opening. They crawled through the dusty shaft, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. After what felt like hours of navigating the labyrinthine ventilation system, they emerged on the outskirts of the Purist compound. Without pausing to catch their breath, they plunged into the dense Lurian forest, their shared physiology adapting to the terrain with each step. As they ran, Scott felt their body changing yet again. Their skin began to emit a soft, pulsating glow that shifted colors in response to their emotional state. He glanced at Queen Gaia, seeing the same mixture of awe and concern in her eyes. We need to get back to the capital, she said, her voice tight with urgency. If the Purists are planning an attack for tomorrow, we don't have much time. They pushed on through the night, their glowing form illuminating the path ahead. As dawn broke, they finally caught sight of the Lurian capital city on the horizon. To their relief, they saw a familiar shuttle touching down nearby. Lieutenant Warren's task force had received their message and come to their aid. As they approached the shuttle, Lieutenant Warren emerged, her face a mask of dedication. Your message came through just in time, she said. We've mobilized every available unit. What's the plan? Scott and Queen Gaia quickly briefed the team on what they had discovered. We need to split up, Scott said. Lieutenant, take a team to neutralize those weapon caches. We'll need another group to secure key government buildings. And what about you two? Warren asked, eyeing their glowing forms with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Queen Gaia's skin pulsed with a deep blue of purpose. We're going after Ambassador Zorai. He's the key to all of this. As the teams dispersed, Scott and Queen Gaia made their way towards the central government complex. Their new bioluminescence made stealth challenging, but they used their enhanced senses to avoid detection, slipping through shadows and ducking into alcoves whenever patrols passed by. Reaching the government building, they used their newfound ability to interface with Lurian technology to bypass the security systems. They moved swiftly through the corridors, their shared consciousness alert for any sign of danger. When they reached Ambassador Zorai's office, they found it empty. Scott rifled through the documents on the desk, while Queen Gaia accessed the computer terminal. Her eyes widened as she scanned the information. "Scott, look at this," she said, her skin flickering with alarm. "There's an emergency meeting of the Lurian High Council scheduled to begin in minutes. This could be the cover for their attack." They raced towards the council chambers, their hearts pounding in perfect unison. As they neared their destination, a strange sensation washed over them. Their skin tingled, and they felt an odd pressure in the air. "Do you feel that?" Scott asked, slowing his pace. Queen Gaia nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's some kind of energy field, similar to the weapons we encountered at the Purist compound, but more powerful." They crept closer to the council chambers, their senses on high alert. Peering around a corner, they saw council members beginning to arrive, oblivious to the danger that awaited them. "The entire room is rigged," Scott whispered, his skin pulsing with a deep red of alarm. "If those weapons activate with the council inside..." Queen Gaia's mind raced, searching for a solution. "We need to disable them, but how? We can't risk setting them off." Scott closed his eyes, focusing on the strange connection he felt with the Lurian technology. "Maybe we can interface with the system, like we did at the compound. If we can just get close enough." They edged closer to the chamber entrance, their bodies glowing brighter as they concentrated. Scott felt their consciousnesses merging more deeply than ever before, their thoughts and abilities blending into a single, powerful entity. As they reached out with their minds, probing the weapon system, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. The weapons were keyed to Ambassador Zorai's unique biosignature, making them impossible to deactivate without his presence. "We have to try something else," Queen Gaia said, her voice tight with frustration. "What if we use our own biosignature? Our physiology has changed so much, maybe we can trick the system." Scott nodded, understanding her plan instantly. They pressed their hands against the chamber doors, focusing all their energy on mimicking Ambassador Zorai's biosignature. Their skin blazed with light, shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors as they pushed their shared biology to its limits. Sweat beaded on their brow as they strained against the weapon's safeguards. They could feel the system resisting, but also sense it beginning to waver. Just a little more pressure, a little more perfect synchronization, and they might break through. Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching from behind. Scott turned, his eyes widening as he saw Ambassador Zorai striding towards them, flanked by guards in Purist uniforms. "You!" Zorai snarled, his face contorted with rage. "How dare you interfere?" As the ambassador raised his hand to signal his guards, Scott and Queen Gaia realized their mission had entered a new, dangerous phase. With the council members filing into the rigged chamber behind them and Zorai's forces closing in from the front, they found themselves caught between two imminent threats. Their shared form pulsed with commitment as they prepared to face this unexpected challenge. Their shared form pulsed with grit as they faced this unexpected predicament. In that moment of crisis, Scott and Queen Gaia's unique bond surged with newfound power. Their skin blazed brighter, emitting a blinding flash that momentarily stunned Zorai and his guards. Seizing the opportunity, they pressed their hands firmly against the chamber doors, channeling every ounce of their combined energy into mimicking Zorai's biosignature. The weapon system wavered, then yielded. A series of soft clicks echoed through the corridor as the deadly devices deactivated. Scott and Queen Gaia shared a fleeting moment of relief before spinning to confront the ambassador and his forces. "It's over, Zorai," Scott declared, his voice resonating with both human and Lurian tones. "Your plan has failed." Before the ambassador could respond, Lieutenant Warren and her team burst into the corridor, weapons trained on Zorai and his guards. "Ambassador, you're under arrest for treason and conspiracy against the Alliance," Warren announced. As Zorai was led away in restraints, the members of the Lurian High Council emerged from the chamber, their faces a mix of confusion and alarm. Queen Gaia stepped forward, her regal bearing amplified by the soft glow emanating from her and Scott's shared form. "Honored council members," she began, "we have uncovered a plot that threatened not only your lives but the future of our alliance. We request an immediate emergency session to address this crisis." The following hours were a whirlwind of activity. Scott and Queen Gaia presented their evidence to the council, detailing Zorai's betrayal and the purest threat. As the gravity of the situation sank in, the council members' initial skepticism gave way to a sense of urgency and purpose. In the days that followed, a series of rapid-fire events reshaped the political landscape of Luria Prime. The purist movement, exposed and discredited, began to crumble. Those who had been swayed by its rhetoric now recoiled from its violent intentions. The alliance between humans and Lurians, tested by fire, emerged stronger than ever. Amidst this tumultuous period, Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves at the center of a new initiative. The Lurian High Council, impressed by their actions and intrigued by their unique abilities, proposed the creation of a joint human-Lurian exploratory force. To their surprise, the council nominated Scott and Queen Gaia to lead this unprecedented venture. As news of the initiative spread, excitement rippled through both human and Lurian communities. Dr. Zara, her scientific curiosity piqued by the couple's evolving physiology, immediately volunteered to establish a research facility aboard the expedition's flagship. The ship, christened the HSS Harmony, became a hub of activity as preparations for the mission began in earnest. Scott and Queen Gaia threw themselves into the work, their enhanced abilities proving invaluable in coordinating the complex logistics of the expedition. Their bond continued to deepen and evolve. One morning, as they reviewed crew assignments in their quarters, Scott suddenly found himself experiencing the sensation of the stylus in Queen Gaia's hand as if it were his own. He looked up, startled, to find her staring at him with equal amazement. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her skin pulsing with a soft blue glow of wonder. Scott nodded, concentrating on the sensation. "It's like I can see through your eyes, feel what you're feeling." This new development in their telepathic abilities transformed their approach to leadership. During planning sessions, they could seamlessly alternate between human and Lurian perspectives, bridging cultural gaps with an ease that astonished their crew. As the launch date approached, a new challenge emerged. The Zorn Empire, a technologically advanced but historically aggressive species, demanded inclusion in the expedition. Scott and Queen Gaia spent long hours debating the request, weighing the potential benefits against the risks. Their technology could be invaluable, Scott mused, pacing their quarters. But can we trust them? Queen Gaia's skin shimmered with thoughtful purple hues. Perhaps this is an opportunity to forge new bonds of cooperation. If we can work alongside the Zorn, it could pave the way for lasting peace. After extensive negotiations, they decided to allow a small Zorn contingent to join the expedition. The decision was met with mixed reactions from the crew, But Scott and Queen Gaia stood firm in their commitment to fostering interspecies cooperation. As the final preparations were made, Scott and Queen Gaia's bond intensified further. During a rare moment of privacy, their physical intimacy triggered an extraordinary phenomenon. Their bodies seemed to merge at a cellular level, creating a sensation of unity, so profound it took their breath away. When they finally separated, they discovered their newfound connection had unexpected benefits. As they made their final inspection of the HSS Harmony's bridge, they found they could interface with the ship's bioneural systems with unprecedented ease. The day of the launch arrived, marked by a grand ceremony attended by dignitaries from Earth, Luria Prime, and the Zorn Empire. As Scott and Queen Gaia boarded the ship, their entwined hands emitted a soft, pulsating glow that captivated the assembled crowd. Taking their positions on the bridge, they exchanged a look of shared excitement and apprehension. As one, they placed their hands on the ship's control interface. The HSS Harmony hummed to life, responding to their touch with an eagerness that surprised even the seasoned engineers among the crew. With a final farewell to the cheering crowds below, Scott and Queen Gaia guided the ship out of Lurian orbit. As they set course for the mysterious star system identified on the artifact chamber's galactic map, a sense of anticipation filled the bridge. The HSS Harmony accelerated smoothly, carrying its diverse crew into the unknown. Scott and Queen Gaia's shared consciousness expanded, encompassing the ship and its occupants in a network of awareness that defied conventional understanding. As they approached the edge of charted space, the couple's skin began to glow with an intensity that illuminated the bridge, a visible manifestation of the extraordinary journey that lay ahead. Ahead, the vastness of unexplored space stretched before them, promising adventure and discovery beyond imagination. As the HSS Harmony cruised through the cosmic expanse, Scott and Queen Gaia's unique connection to the ship deepened. They found themselves able to sense minute fluctuations in the vessel's systems, anticipating needs before they arose. This heightened awareness proved invaluable as they approached their destination, a mysterious planet that pulsed with energy signatures matching those of the ancient artifacts. "We're entering the planet's orbit," Lieutenant Warren announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Atmospheric readings indicate it's breathable, but with high concentrations of unknown elements. Scott nodded, his skin rippling with anticipation. "Prepare the landing shuttle. We'll lead a small team to the surface." As they boarded the shuttle, Dr. Zara approached, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "This is extraordinary," she said, gesturing to her data pad. "The planet's electromagnetic field is unlike anything we've encountered. It seems to be interacting with your physiology in ways I can't explain." Queen Gaia smiled, her skin pulsing with soft blue hues. "We feel it too, Doctor. It's as if the planet itself is reaching out to us." The show's descent through the alien atmosphere was smooth, thanks to Scott and Queen Gaia's intuitive control. Their glowing bodies illuminated the interior, casting an otherworldly glow on the faces of their team members. Human, Lurian, and Zorn crew members exchanged nervous glances, acutely aware of the historic nature of their mission. As they touched down on the planet's surface, Scott and Queen Gaia led the way out of the shuttle. The landscape that greeted them was a breathtaking fusion of natural beauty and artificial precision. Towering crystalline structures emerged seamlessly from verdant plains, their surfaces shimmering with patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "Incredible," Scott breathed, his skin patterns shifting in response to the planet's energy. "It's like the entire world is alive." Dr. Zara activated her scanner, her brow furrowing as she analyzed the data. "These readings are off the charts. The energy patterns here are similar to those we detected in the artifact chamber, but on a massive scale." As the team moved forward, Scott and Queen Gaia suddenly stumbled, their hands flying to their temples. A flood of sensations washed over them, strange yet oddly familiar. "Do you feel that?" Queen Gaia asked, her voice tight with concentration. Scott nodded, his eyes wide. It's like thoughts, but not ours. They're coming from everywhere. Before they could discuss this further, movement caught their attention. A group of translucent beings seemed to materialize from the very air around them. Their bodies pulsed with bioluminescence, shifting between solid and ethereal states. Instinctively, Scott and Queen Gaia reached out with their minds, establishing a tentative telepathic connection. Information flowed between them in a torrent of images and emotions. They called themselves the HFY, Queen Gaia announced to the team. And this world, it's connected to the artifact network we discovered. The HFY's thoughts conveyed curiosity and welcome. They beckoned the team to follow, leading them towards a massive crystalline structure at the heart of their settlement. As they approached, Scott and Queen Gaia felt their bodies resonate with the structure's energy, their skin patterns aligning with its pulsating rhythms. Inside, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with technology that defied comprehension. Swirling holographic displays danced through the air, depicting star systems and energy flows on a galactic scale. Through their mental link, the HFY began to explain. This was one of many galactic nexus points, designed to facilitate cooperation between diverse species across the universe. Scott and Queen Gaia's transformation, they learned, was part of a long-dormant protocol activated by their successful union. Dr. Zara, upon hearing this, could barely contain her excitement. A protocol designed to create interspecies mediators? The implications are staggering. As the HFY continued their explanation, they led the team deeper into the structure. They came to a chamber housing a device that dwarfed the artifacts found on Luria Prime. The HFY's thoughts conveyed its purpose, a galactic gateway, capable of instantaneous travel between nexus points across the universe. Scott and Queen Gaia found themselves drawn to the gateway, their bodies humming with energy. The HFY, sensing their connection, made an unexpected offer. They invited the couple to undergo a specialized adaptation process that would fully unlock their potential as galactic mediators. The implications of this offer hung heavy in the air. Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a look, their shared consciousness swirling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The opportunity before them was unprecedented, but accepting it would mean transcending their original forms, becoming something entirely new. As they contemplated this monumental decision, tensions began to rise among the expedition team. The Zorn contingent expressed concerns about the potential power imbalance, while Dr. Zara argued passionately for the scientific and diplomatic benefits. Amidst the growing debate, Scott and Queen Gaia retreated to a private chamber provided by the HFY. As they connected both physically and mentally, their bodies began to emit a brilliant, pulsating light that resonated with the gateway chamber. The fate of their expedition, and potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as they prepared to make their choice. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for their decision. The universe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for their answer. As if responding to an unspoken signal, Scott and Queen Gaia emerged from their private chamber, their bodies emanating a soft, pulsating glow. The expedition team gathered around them, faces etched with a mixture of anticipation and concern. Scott's voice, tinged with an otherworldly resonance, broke the tense silence. We've decided to accept the HFY's offer. We'll undergo the adaptation process. Queen Gaia's skin rippled with patterns of persistence as she added, "This is an unprecedented opportunity for galactic cooperation. We can't turn away from it." Their announcement sent ripples of reaction through the assembled crew. Dr. Zara's eyes lit up with scientific excitement, while Lieutenant Warren's brow furrowed with concern. The Zorn representatives exchanged meaningful glances, their scaled skin shifting hues. Without further delay, the HFY led Scott and Queen Gaia to a specially prepared chamber within the central hub. As they entered, The couple gasped in unison. The room was a marvel of alien architecture, filled with pulsating crystalline structures that emitted a soft, otherworldly glow. The moment they stepped inside, their bodies began to resonate with the energy in the chamber, their skin patterns shifting and aligning with the crystalline structures. Dr. Zara and her team rushed to set up monitoring equipment around the chamber, their movements precise and efficient. "This is extraordinary," she muttered, eyes fixed on her data pad. "The energy readings are off the charts." The Ethere's thoughts flowed into Scott and Queen Gaia's minds, explaining the process. "The adaptation will take several hours and may cause significant physical changes to your bodies. Once it begins, it cannot be reversed or interrupted without severe consequences." Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a look, their shared consciousness swirling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. They nodded in unison, signaling their readiness. As the adaptation process commenced, Scott and Queen Gaia's bodies levitated in the center of the chamber, surrounded by swirling energy patterns. Their forms began to blur and merge, individual features becoming less distinct. Dr. Zara's monitoring equipment beeped frantically, detecting rapid changes in their cellular structure. "Incredible," Dr. Zara breathed, her eyes darting between her equipment and the transformation taking place. "Their DNA is completely reorganizing itself." Outside the chamber, tensions among the expedition team escalated. Lieutenant Warren paced back and forth, her hand resting on her weapon. "I don't like this," she muttered to her second-in-command. "Increase surveillance on the Etheri settlement. We need to be prepared for any eventuality." Ambassador Crosthall, the lead Zorn representative, approached Dr. Zara with barely concealed agitation. "This power imbalance is unacceptable," he hissed, his scaled skin flushing dark. "We demand assurances that the transformed couple will not pose a threat to the Zorn Empire." As hours passed, the energy patterns in the chamber intensified. Scott and Queen Gaia's merged form began to emit pulses of light that synchronized with the gateway device in the nearby chamber. The Ethere's thoughts reached out to the observing team, explaining that this synchronization indicated the couple's attunement to the galactic network. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the settlement, their shrill cry cutting through the tense atmosphere. The Ethere's long-range sensors had detected an incoming fleet of unknown origin, rapidly approaching the planet. Lieutenant Warren sprang into action, barking orders to her team. "Prepare defensive positions. We don't know if they're friendly or hostile." Amidst the chaos, Ambassador Crosthall received a transmission. His eyes widened as he listened, then narrowed as he turned to face the human and Lurian crew members. "The Zorn Empire has been tracking our progress," he announced, his voice a mix of pride and defiance. "They have sent a battle fleet to ensure the protection of Zorn interests." The revelation sent shockwaves through the team. Accusations of betrayal flew back and forth, the fragile alliance threatening to shatter under the weight of mistrust. As the situation escalated, the adaptation chamber began to overload with energy. Arcs of lightning crackled across its surface, and the crystalline structures vibrated with increasing intensity. An Etheri materialized beside Dr. Zara, its thoughts urgent. "The process cannot be interrupted now. It could have catastrophic consequences for Scott and Queen Gaia, and potentially destabilize the entire nexus point." Dr. Zara and her team worked frantically to stabilize the chamber, their fingers flying over control panels as they attempted to contain the surging energy. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Warren coordinated with the HSS Harmony in orbit, preparing for a possible confrontation with the incoming Zorn fleet. The Etheri, their ethereal forms flickering with concern, activated ancient defense systems hidden beneath the planet's surface. The ground trembled as massive structures rose from hidden compartments, their purpose unknown, but their power palpable. Inside the chamber, Scott and Queen Gaia's consciousness expanded beyond their physical forms. They became acutely aware of the crisis unfolding around them, their merged mind racing to complete the transformation in time to address the looming threat. Their body continued to change, developing features that blended human, Lurian, and ethery characteristics in ways that defied conventional understanding. As the Zorn fleet entered the star system, the expedition team found themselves at a crossroads. Trust Scott and Queen Gaia's emerging abilities to defuse the situation or take military action to protect themselves and the ethery settlement. Before a decision could be made, the adaptation chamber reached its final stage. A blinding flash of light erupted from within, temporarily disrupting all electronic systems in the settlement. As the light faded, the chamber opened with a hiss of released energy. From the dissipating mist emerged a being of pure energy, its humanoid shape pulsating with the same rhythm as the gateway device. This was Scott and Queen Gaia, transformed beyond recognition, yet somehow still familiar. Without a word, the transformed couple moved towards the gateway chamber, their every movement radiating power and purpose. As they approached the ancient device, their energy form began to interface with it, activating systems dormant for millennia. A massive holographic display materialized, showing the star system in intricate detail. The positions of the Zorn fleet, the HSS Harmony, and the ethery settlement were clearly visible, a cosmic chessboard set for a game with unimaginable stakes. The expedition team watched in awe as Scott and Queen Gaia, now one being of incredible power, prepared to face their first challenge as galactic mediators. The fate of their mission, the newly discovered nexus point, and perhaps the balance of power in the galaxy itself hung in the balance. As the transformed couple raised their hands, energy crackling between their fingers, the gateway device hummed to life. A beam of light shot forth, connecting with the lead Zorn ship. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the future of interstellar relations. The transformed couple raised their hands, energy crackling between their fingers. As the gateway device hummed to life, a beam of light shot forth, connecting with the lead Zorn ship. In that instant, Scott and Queen Gaia's merged consciousness expanded beyond the confines of the planet, reaching out to the galactic network. Their energy form pulsed with an otherworldly glow as they interfaced with the ancient technology. The expedition team watched in awe as the couple's consciousness extended across vast distances, bridging the gap between the planet's surface and the approaching Zorn fleet. Through this unprecedented connection, Scott and Queen Gaia transmitted a message directly into the minds of the Zorn commanders. Their thoughts carried images of peace and unity, showcasing the true nature of the ethery nexus point and its potential to benefit all species. Simultaneously, a massive holographic display materialized above the settlement, visible to both the expedition team and the Zorn fleet. The shimmering projection depicted Scott and Queen Gaia's journey, from their first encounter to their current transformation. The images flowed seamlessly, emphasizing the power of cooperation and mutual understanding between species. Ambassador Crosthow's eyes widened as he witnessed the display. His scaled skin shifted hues rapidly, reflecting his inner turmoil. Realizing the enormous diplomatic implications of this development, he quickly tapped a series of commands into his communication device. "Stand down," he hissed urgently into the transmitter. "This situation requires careful consideration. The potential here is unprecedented." The Zorn fleet, caught off guard by the unexpected form of communication, halted its advance. The massive ships hung motionless in space, their weapon systems powered down as the commanders processed the information flooding their minds. On the planet's surface, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy form split into two distinct but interconnected entities. They maintained their link to the gateway device while moving among the expedition team. As they approached each group, waves of telepathic energy emanated from their glowing forms. Dr. Zara gasped as she felt the couple's presence in her mind. "It's incredible," she whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. I can understand everything. The Ethri, the Zorn. It's all so clear now. The transformed couple facilitated direct, telepathic communication between humans, Lurians, Zorn, and Ethri. Barriers of language and culture fell away as each species gained a profound understanding of the other's perspectives and motivations. Lieutenant Warren, who had been poised for conflict moments before, lowered her weapon. She exchanged a look of newfound respect with a Zorn warrior, nodding in silent acknowledgement of their shared concerns and hopes. As the atmosphere of tension dissipated, Dr. Zara's monitoring equipment began to emit a series of urgent beeps. She rushed to the console, her fingers flying over the controls as she analyzed the incoming data. "The planet's electromagnetic field is changing," she announced, her voice filled with excitement. "There are massive energy fluctuations throughout the Ethri settlement." The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly as hidden chambers and passageways revealed themselves. Walls shimmered and disappeared, exposing vast halls filled with advanced technology and ancient artifacts. The Ethri's ethereal forms pulsed with excitement as they guided the expedition team through the newly accessible areas. These chambers contained knowledge from civilizations long past, and Ethri communicated, its thoughts tinged with reverence. "We invite all present to join us in exploring this legacy." Ambassador Crosthall stepped forward, his earlier suspicion replaced by cautious optimism. "The Zorn Empire would be honored to participate in this joint venture," he declared, glancing at the human and Lurian representatives. As the diverse group began to explore the hidden chambers, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with a new intensity. Their awareness expanded further, reaching out beyond the confines of the star system. Faint signals tickled the edges of their consciousness, hinting at the existence of other nexus points scattered across the galaxy. Excited murmurs filled the air as news of the peaceful resolution spread. The HSS Harmony, still in orbit, relayed messages from Earth and Luria Prime. Government officials expressed a mix of awe and apprehension at the implications of Scott and Queen Gaia's transformation. Dr. Zara, her face illuminated by the glow of her data pad, began organizing the expedition team into specialized task forces. "We need to catalog and study everything we find here," she explained. "But we must ensure that all species have equal access to the knowledge and technology." As the initial excitement settled into focused exploration, Scott and Queen Gaia faced a new challenge. Their energy forms shifted and fluctuated as they attempted to create physical manifestations that could interact more directly with their former colleagues. The Ethri, recognizing the couple's unique position, stepped forward to offer guidance. "We will train you in the use of your new abilities," they communicated. "You must learn to navigate the galactic network and use your powers responsibly." With the Ethri's guidance, Scott and Queen Gaia prepared for their first attempt at long-distance transportation through the Gateway network. The expedition team gathered around the ancient device, a mix of anticipation and concern on their faces. Energy crackled and swirled as the transformed couple interfaced with the Gateway. In a blinding flash of light, they vanished, leaving behind a stunned audience. Moments that felt like eternity passed before another flash heralded their return. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with excitement as they shared their experience. Through a combination of telepathic images and spoken words, they described a distant star system and brief encounters with unknown civilizations. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled team. The known galaxy had expanded far beyond previous estimations in a single moment. As the implications sank in, plans for future expeditions and first contact missions began to take shape. Amidst the flurry of activity, Scott and Queen Gaia found a moment of quiet. Their energy forms intertwined, pulsing in harmony as they communicated silently. They had found a delicate balance between their new existence and their original identities, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. As the expanded expedition team prepared to return to Earth and Luria Prime with their groundbreaking discoveries, Scott and Queen Gaia stood at the heart of the Ethri settlement. Their transformed selves, now a bridge between worlds, pulsed with the promise of a new era of galactic cooperation and exploration. Exploration. The promise of a new era of galactic cooperation hung in the air as the expedition team began preparations for their return journey to Earth and Luria Prime. As the team bustled about, packing equipment and cataloging samples, Lieutenant Warren approached the HSS Harmony, her keen eyes scanning the ship's exterior. She tapped her communication device, signaling the start of pre-launch checks. "Initiating system diagnostics," she announced, her voice crisp and professional. Moments later, her brow furrowed as a series of angry red warnings flashed across her data pad. "We've got multiple system malfunctions," she called out, her tone urgent. "Propulsion, life support, navigation, all showing critical errors." Dr. Zara hurried over, her face etched with concern. "That's impossible. We just ran a full diagnostic yesterday." Lieutenant Warren's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a malfunction. It's sabotage." The word sent a ripple of tension through the gathered team. Ambassador Crosthall's scales shifted to a deep purple, a sign of distress in his species. Scott and Queen Gaia, their energy forms pulsing with shared purpose, glided towards the ship. Without a word, they began to interface with the Harmony systems, their ethereal bodies flowing into the ship's circuitry like water. Inside the ship's computer core, Scott and Queen Gaia's merged consciousness expanded, racing through lines of code and circuitry. They detected corrupted subroutines and deliberately misaligned power couplings, correcting each flaw with precision. As they worked, their energy activated dormant systems within the ship, hidden Ethri technology that had lain undetected since the Harmony's construction. The ancient tech began to integrate with the ship's existing systems, creating a hybrid of human and Ethri engineering. On the bridge, control panels flickered to life, displaying holographic interfaces that hadn't existed moments before. The ship's power core hummed with newfound energy, its output doubling, then tripling. Dr. Zara watched in awe as the ship's schematics updated in real time on her data pad. "This is incredible," she breathed, her fingers flying across the screen as she documented the changes. "The Harmony's capabilities have increased exponentially. We're looking at a revolution in space travel technology." As Scott and Queen Gaia completed their work, Lieutenant Warren's investigation bore fruit. She cornered a small group of Zorn, their body language betraying their guilt. "We've got our saboteurs," Warren announced, her weapon trained on the group. "Zorn extremists, opposed to our newfound alliance." Ambassador Crosthall's head crest flattened in shame. "I offer my deepest apologies," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "These individuals will face the full consequences of their actions under Zorn law." As the suspects were secured in the ship's brig, a new dilemma arose. The integration of Ethri technology had transformed the Harmony into a vessel far beyond anything in the combined fleets of Earth, Luria Prime, or the Zorn Empire. Scott and Queen Gaia, their energy forms coalescing into more defined shapes, addressed the gathered team. "We understand the concerns this advancement may raise." They spoke in unison, their voices a harmonious blend. "To ensure balance, we will transmit encrypted schematics to scientific institutions on all our worlds." Their energy forms pulsed, and streams of data flowed through the galactic network, reaching distant research facilities. This action ensured that no single group would have a monopoly on the new technology. As final preparations for departure began, an Ethri elder approached, carrying a small, crystalline device. "This will allow limited communication to the galactic network," the Ethri explained, its thoughts resonating in the minds of the team. "Use it to coordinate future explorations and maintain our alliance." The HSS Harmony, now a marvel of hybrid technology, lifted off from the planet's surface. Scott and Queen Gaia positioned themselves at the heart of the ship's new systems, their energy forms intertwining with the advanced circuitry. As they broke orbit, Scott and Queen Gaia activated the improved propulsion systems. Space itself seemed to ripple around the ship as a localized wormhole formed, swallowing the Harmony and spitting it out light years away in an instant. The journey that had originally taken months now progressed in a matter of days. During the trip, Scott and Queen Gaia worked tirelessly with the crew, establishing protocols for the safe use of their new capabilities. Dr. Zara, her eyes alight with scientific curiosity, spent every waking moment compiling data from the Ethri Nexus Point. This information will keep our scientists busy for decades, she mused, organizing the data for efficient dissemination upon their return. As the Harmony approached the outskirts of Earth's solar system, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy formed suddenly pulsed with increased intensity. Their senses, attuned to the galactic network, detected something unexpected. There are active Ethri energy signatures within this system, they announced, their merged voice filled with surprise and excitement. Dr. Zara's head snapped up from her data pad. Within our solar system? Are you certain? Scott and Queen Gaia's forms shimmered with affirmation. The signals are faint, but unmistakable. It seems Earth may have its own dormant nexus point, hidden somewhere among the planets or moons. A buzz of excitement filled the bridge as the implications sank in. Lieutenant Warren began plotting a deceleration course, her fingers dancing across the new holographic controls. As the HSS Harmony slowed its approach to Earth, the crew prepared for their momentous return. Scott and Queen Gaia, their energy forms pulsating with anticipation, readied themselves to present their transformed selves and their groundbreaking discoveries to the leaders of Earth and the waiting delegations from Luria Prime and the Zorn Empire. The potential discovery of an Ethri nexus point within the solar system added an extra layer of excitement and urgency to their return. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a silent communication. Their journey had opened up new frontiers of exploration and cooperation, but it seemed their greatest adventure might be waiting for them right in humanity's cosmic backyard. The promise of new discoveries hung in the air, electrifying the atmosphere on board the HSS Harmony as it approached the outer edges of Earth's solar system. Suddenly, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with increased intensity. Their merged consciousness expanded, reaching out to the vastness of space. Lieutenant Warren noticed the change immediately. "Scott, Gaia, what's happening?" she asked, her hand hovering over the ship's controls. Their voices resonated in unison, a melodious blend of excitement and urgency. "We're detecting an unusual energy signature. It's familiar yet different. Coming from Europa." Dr. Zara's eyes widened. "Jupiter's moon? But that's impossible. We've never detected anything like that there before." Without hesitation, Lieutenant Warren input new coordinates, altering the Harmony's course. The ship's engines hummed with power as it changed direction, heading towards the icy moon orbiting the gas giant. As they approached Europa, the energy signature grew stronger. Scott and Queen Gaia's forms shimmered with anticipation. "It's definitely Ethri in origin," they confirmed. "A dormant nexus point, buried deep beneath the ice." Ambassador Crosthall's scales rippled with a mix of purple and gold, indicating both concern and excitement. "This changes everything. We must investigate before returning to Earth." The Harmony entered Europa's orbit, its sensors scanning the icy surface. Dr. Zara worked furiously at her console, analyzing the data streaming in. "The nexus point is located approximately 20 kilometers beneath the surface," she reported. "We'll need to penetrate the ice sheet to reach it." Scott and Queen Gaia interface with the ship's systems, their energy merging with the newly integrated Ethri technology. In response, a hidden compartment opened in the Harmony's hull, revealing a sleek, submersible vehicle. "This vessel is capable of withstanding the extreme pressures and temperatures we'll encounter," they explained. "It's enhanced with Ethri tech, allowing it to move through ice as easily as water. As the team prepared for the descent, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms separated from the ship systems. "We'll accompany the submersible," they announced. "Our energy state allows us to exist in environments that would be lethal to physical beings." The submersible detached from the Harmony, Scott and Queen Gaia's glowing forms flanking it as it began its descent towards Europa's surface. The ice grew closer, a vast white expanse filling the view screen. Inside the submersible, Dr. Zara, Lieutenant Warren, and a small team of specialists watched in awe as the vessel seamlessly entered the ice. The Ethery technology hummed, creating a localized field that allowed them to pass through the frozen molecules as if they were water. As they descended through the thick ice sheet, the submersible's lights illuminated their surroundings. Startling blues and whites gave way to darker hues as they penetrated deeper into Europa's crust. Suddenly, the ice disappeared, and they found themselves suspended in a vast, dark ocean. The submersible's powerful lights cut through the gloom, revealing glimpses of alien aquatic life darting away from the unexpected intruders. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with excitement. "The nexus point is close," they communicated. "But there's something else. Something unexpected." As if on cue, the submersible's lights fell upon a structure in the distance. As they drew closer, the team gasped in unison. Before them stood a vast underwater city, its architecture unlike anything they had ever seen. It's incredible," Dr. Zara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "An entire alien city, hidden beneath Europa's ice all this time." Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms darted towards the city, interfacing with its long-dormant systems. As they did, lights began to flicker on throughout the structures, illuminating the underwater metropolis in its full glory. The submersible approached a central structure that appeared to be a docking station. As they drew near, an opening appeared, large enough to accommodate their vessel. Lieutenant Warren skillfully maneuvered them inside, where the water drained away, leaving them in a pressurized, air-filled chamber. Dr. Zara and her team donned specialized suits designed for extreme environments. As they exited the submersible, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms coalesced nearby, guiding them deeper into the alien structure. "The technology here is incredible," Dr. Zara marveled, her scanner picking up readings she could barely comprehend. "It's far beyond anything we've encountered, even from the Ethery." As they explored, Scott and Queen Gaia interfaced with various consoles and devices, unlocking sealed doors and decrypting data stores. The team moved from room to room, each new discovery more astounding than the last. In a vast chamber at the heart of the structure, they found a holographic projector. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy signature resonated with the device, activating it. A shimmering image appeared before them, depicting a species of aquatic humanoids. The hologram spoke, its words translated through Scott and Queen Gaia's connection to the galactic network. "Greetings, explorers. We are the Neptunians, allies of the Ethery and former guardians of this sector. This outpost was established to monitor the development of the species on the third planet of this system." The team listened in rapt attention as the hologram explained the history of the Neptunian presence in the solar system, their alliance with the Ethery, and the mysterious threat that forced them to abandon their outpost millennia ago. As the hologram faded, the implications of their discovery began to sink in. Lieutenant Warren immediately started assessing potential security risks, while Dr. Zara could barely contain her excitement at the scientific possibilities. Ambassador Crossthol's scales shifted to a deep blue, indicating deep thought. "The diplomatic ramifications of this discovery will be significant," he said, his voice low. "Many will claim rights to study and potentially colonize this moon." Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed, drawing the team's attention. "There's more," they announced. "We're detecting faint signals through the galactic network. It seems there may be other Neptunian outposts throughout the galaxy, on water-rich moons and planets. The revelation sent a ripple of excitement through the team. The possibilities for further exploration and contact with new species seemed endless. As they continued their exploration, they came upon a sealed chamber that radiated an intense energy signature. Scott and Queen Gaia's forms resonated with the chamber, causing its doors to slide open with a soft hiss. Inside, they found a device similar to the gateway on the Ethery homeworld, but adapted for underwater use. As Scott and Queen Gaia approached it, the device hummed to life, its energy building rapidly. "It's activating," Dr. Zara shouted, her instruments going haywire. "The nexus point is coming online." A surge of energy erupted from the device, racing through the galactic network. Scott and Queen Gaia's forms shimmered as they sensed responses from distant nexus points, a clear indication that the long-dormant network was reawakening. As the energy surge subsided, the team stood in stunned silence, the weight of their discovery settling upon them. They had not only found an ancient alien outpost in Earth's solar system, but had also potentially reconnected long-lost civilizations across the galaxy. The comm system in their suits crackled to life, breaking the moment of awe. It was a transmission from the HSS Harmony. "Expedition team, this is the bridge," came the urgent voice of the communications officer. "We are receiving multiple high-priority transmissions from Earth, Luria Prime, and the Zorn Empire. They're demanding immediate briefings on our findings." What should we tell them? The team exchanged glances, the enormity of their task becoming clear. They had unlocked a new chapter in galactic history, and now they had to find a way to share it with a universe that might not be ready for the truth. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with willpower. "We need to return to the surface," they said, their merged voice filled with purpose. "It's time to introduce humanity to its new reality." As the team began to make their way back to the submersible, the ancient city around them hummed with renewed life, a testament to the incredible journey that lay ahead. The future of galactic relations hung in the balance, and the next steps they took would shape the destiny of countless worlds. The team began their ascent from Europa's hidden depths, their minds reeling from the magnitude of their discoveries. As the HSS Harmony broke through the icy surface and prepared to leave Jupiter's orbit, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with renewed vigor. Suddenly, their luminous bodies flickered, a disturbance rippling through their essence. Lieutenant Warren noticed the change immediately. "Scott, Gaia, what's wrong?" she asked, her hand hovering over the ship's controls. Their merged voice resonated with a mix of surprise and concern. "There's an anomaly in the ship's Ethery systems. It appears to be a hidden subroutine within the Neptunian data we retrieved." Dr. Zara's fingers flew across her console, analyzing the unexpected development. "It's attempting to interface with our navigation systems," she reported, her brow furrowed in concentration. Ambassador Crosthall's scales shimmered with a mix of purple and gold. "We cannot risk compromising the ship's integrity. We must investigate this immediately." Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms expanded, enveloping the ship systems. "Agreed. We need a stable surface to safely examine this subroutine. Mars is our closest option." Without hesitation, Lieutenant Warren input the new coordinates. The HSS Harmony's engines hummed to life, propelling them towards a red planet. As they approached Mars, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms separated from the ship systems. "We'll investigate the surface," they announced. "Our energy state allows us to withstand the harsh environment." The Harmony touched down on the rust-colored landscape, kicking up a cloud of fine Martian dust. Scott and Queen Gaia's glowing forms exited the ship, hovering just above the planet's surface. Their merged consciousness expanded, sensing the alien world around them. Something felt different, a subtle vibration in the planet's crust that didn't match their expectations. "There's an area of unusual geological activity approximately 2 kilometers north," they communicated to the ship. "We're going to investigate." As they approached the location, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the Martian soil, spreading outward like a spider's web. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with anticipation. Suddenly, the earth heaved upward, revealing a massive structure rising from beneath the red dust. Its sleek lines and otherworldly architecture left no doubt about its origins. "It's Neptunian," Scott and Queen Gaia's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Another outpost, adapted for a terrestrial environment." Inside the Harmony, the crew watched in awe as the alien structure continued to emerge. Dr. Zara hurriedly donned her protective suit, eager to explore this new discovery. "Lieutenant Warren, prepare a team for surface exploration," she ordered, her voice brimming with excitement. "We need to gather as much data as possible before we report back to Earth." As Dr. Zara and her team exited the ship, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy formed interface with the Neptunian outpost systems. Ancient machinery hummed to life, holographic displays flickering into existence. "This is incredible," Dr. Zara breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the alien technology surrounding them. "It looks like some kind of climate control system. Could it be?" Scott and Queen Gaia's merged voice filled the chamber. "You're correct, Doctor. This outpost was part of a long-term terraforming project. Mars once hosted a thriving ecosystem, carefully maintained by the Neptunians." The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the team. Lieutenant Warren immediately began coordinating with Earth space agencies, securing the site and preparing for a larger expedition. As they delved deeper into the outpost systems, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms suddenly tensed. "We're detecting a faint signal," they announced. "It's coming from the planet's core." Their luminous bodies streaked towards the source of the signal, penetrating layers of Martian rock. What they found was beyond their wildest expectations: a dormant planetary defense system, designed by the Neptunians to protect their terraforming project. Eager to unlock its secrets, Scott and Queen Gaia attempted to interface with the ancient technology. Suddenly, a surge of energy coursed through their forms, causing them to flicker and destabilize. "Scott, Gaia," Dr. Zara's voice crackled through their communication link. "What's happening?" Their merged voice came back weak and distorted. "The system. Too powerful. We need to regenerate." Retreating to the HSS Harmony, Scott and Queen Gaia's unstable energy forms were quickly ushered into a specialized containment chamber. As the regeneration process began, the rest of the team continued their exploration of the Martian outpost under Dr. Zara's guidance. Hours passed as Scott and Queen Gaia's energy signatures slowly stabilized. During this time, they experienced a shared vision of Mars' past, a world transformed from barren wasteland to lush paradise under Neptunian care. When they finally emerged from the containment chamber, Scott and Queen Gaia found their abilities had evolved further. They could now interact with planetary-scale systems in ways they never thought possible. Returning to the Martian surface, they approached the climate control systems they had discovered earlier. With their newfound abilities, they began to reactivate dormant components of the terraforming equipment. As ancient machinery whirred to life, the implications of their actions rippled across the solar system. On Earth, space agencies detected sudden bursts of activity from various moons and asteroids, other Neptunian technologies awakening from their long slumber. The HSS Harmony's communication systems lit up with urgent messages from Earth, Luria Prime, and the Zorn Empire. Each demanded immediate access to the Martian outpost and its revolutionary technologies. Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a glance, their energy forms pulsing in unison. The challenges that lay ahead were immense, but so were the opportunities. As they prepared to return to Earth and face a world forever changed by their discoveries, one thing was certain: the future of humanity and the galaxy would never be the same. The future of humanity and the galaxy would never be the same. As the HSS Harmony prepared to leave Mars and return to Earth, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms suddenly pulsed with alarm. "Wait!" Their merged voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Something's happening on the surface." Lieutenant Warren halted the launch sequence, her hand hovering over the controls. "What is it?" Scott and Queen Gaia's luminous form streaked towards the viewing port. "The Martian defense system. It's powering up fully." Dr. Zara rushed to her console, fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Confirmed. We're detecting massive energy spikes across the planet's surface." Ambassador Crosthow's scales shifted to a deep indigo. "We cannot leave until we understand the implications of this development." Without hesitation, Scott and Queen Gaia phased through the ship's hull, their energy forms now perfectly adapted to Mars' harsh environment. They approached the central control hub of the defense system, which had risen from beneath the red dust like a metallic flower unfurling its petals. As they interfaced with the alien technology, a surge of information flooded their merged consciousness. Suddenly, a holographic projection materialized before them, depicting a Neptunian figure. The hologram spoke, its voice resonating with ancient wisdom. "Greetings, inheritors of our legacy. If you are witnessing this message, then the conditions for our return have been met." Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with surprise. They transmitted the message back to the HSS Harmony, where the crew watched in stunned silence. The Neptunian hologram continued, "We did not abandon this system, as you may have believed. Instead, we entered a state of deep hibernation within a hidden facility on the distant world you call Pluto. Our sleep was designed to last until the solar system was ready for our return." Dr. Zara's eyes widened as she processed the implications. She turned to Lieutenant Warren, her voice urgent. "The activities on Earth, Europa, and now Mars, they must have triggered the awakening protocols." As if in response to her realization, the hologram flickered and changed, showing a massive structure buried beneath Pluto's icy surface. "Our people sleep within, waiting for the signal to awaken. That time has come." The projection faded, leaving Scott and Queen Gaia hovering above the now fully activated Martian defense system. The planet's surface hummed with energy as an iridescent shield began to form in the upper atmosphere. "It's not a defensive measure," Scott and Queen Gaia communicated to the ship. "The shield is designed to contain and accelerate the terraforming process." As they spoke, the Martian landscape began to change. Fissures opened in the ground, releasing plumes of gas and vapor. The sky above darkened as the shield trapped the emerging atmosphere. Aboard the HSS Harmony, alarms blared. Lieutenant Warren's hands danced across the control panel. "We're detecting similar energy signatures throughout the solar system. Venus, the asteroid belt, Jupiter's moons, they're all activating." Ambassador Crosstow moved to the communication array. "We must inform Earth immediately. The political and diplomatic ramifications of this event are beyond measure." As the ambassador relayed their discoveries to Earth, Scott and Queen Gaia delved deeper into the Martian systems. Their unique physiology, a blend of human, Lurian, and ethery elements, allowed them to interface with the Neptunian technology at an unprecedented level. They found themselves able to influence the terraforming process directly. Under their guidance, the transformation of Mars accelerated. Vast ice caps began to melt, forming the first Martian oceans in millions of years. The thin atmosphere thickened, turning from rust red to a more Earth-like blue. Dr. Zara stared at her instruments in disbelief. The changes to Mars' climate, they're happening in hours instead of centuries. As the team marveled at the rapid transformation of Mars, a new alert sounded on the ship's long-range sensors. Lieutenant Warren's voice was tense as she reported, "Massive object detected, approaching from the outer solar system. Size estimate, over 100 kilometers in length. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with recognition. It's them. The Neptunians have awakened. The colossal Neptunian vessel moved at impossible speeds, warping space-time around it. Dr. Zara's calculations showed it would reach Mars within days. As the ship approached, its gravitational influence began to affect the solar system. Planets and asteroids shifted in their orbits, causing concern for potential collisions. Scott and Queen Gaia, still connected to the Martian defense systems, acted quickly. They used the planet's new energy shield to project a stabilizing field, minimizing the gravitational disruptions. Ambassador Crosthall received urgent communications from Earth. The United Nations had formed a Solar System Defense and Diplomacy Council, preparing for humanity's first official contact with the Neptunians. As the massive alien ship entered Mars orbit, Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with anticipation. They had positioned themselves as the front line of this historic encounter, ready to bridge the gap between humanity and this ancient, mysterious species. The HSS Harmony hovered nearby, its crew tense and alert. The fate of multiple civilizations hung in the balance as a hatch on the Neptunian vessel began to open, revealing a blinding light from within. Revealing a blinding light from the vessel's interior. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with anticipation as they positioned themselves at the forefront of the HSS Harmony's observation deck. Suddenly, a powerful energy beam erupted from the Neptunian vessel, striking the Martian surface with pinpoint precision. The beam interacted with the planet's newly activated terraforming systems, causing a cascade of reactions that rippled across the landscape. Dr. Zara's eyes widened as she watched her instruments. The terraforming process is accelerating exponentially. We're witnessing centuries of change in a matter of hours. The crew watched in awe as Mars transformed before their eyes. Vast ice caps melted, forming shimmering bodies of water that spread across the red planet's surface. The atmosphere thickened visibly, turning from a rusty hue to a more Earth-like blue. Lieutenant Warren's hands hovered over the ship's defense controls. "Should we consider this a hostile action?" she asked, tension evident in her voice. Ambassador Crosthall shook his head, his scales shifting to a contemplative green. "Not necessarily. This could be a demonstration of their capabilities, or an offering." As they debated, a smaller vessel detached from the Neptunian mothership, descending towards the rapidly changing Martian surface. Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a silent communication, their energy forms flickering with purpose. "We'll meet them." Their merged voice echoed through the ship's comm system. "We're best equipped to handle any potential threat or opportunity." Without waiting for a response, Scott and Queen Gaia phased through the ship's hull, their energy forms adapting seamlessly to the evolving Martian environment. They streaked across the sky, leaving trails of iridescent light in their wake. As they approached the landing site, the Neptunian shuttle touched down on the newly formed Martian soil. A hatch opened, revealing a group of tall, bioluminescent beings. Their bodies pulsed with complex patterns of light, hinting at an advanced form of communication. The leader of the group stepped forward, its form more intricate and luminous than the others. It raised a limb in what appeared to be a gesture of greeting. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms coalesced into a more humanoid shape, mirroring the Neptunian stance. Suddenly, a series of bioelectrical signals emanated from the alien beings, forming intricate patterns in the air between them. To their surprise, Scott and Queen Gaia found they could interpret these signals. Their unique physiology, a blend of human, Lurian, and ethery elements, allowed them to process and respond to this complex form of communication. "We are High Emissary Xylith." The leader's thoughts resonated in their minds. "We did not expect to encounter evolved energy beings upon our return. Your presence is intriguing." Scott and Queen Gaia's merged consciousness formulated a response, projecting it back in the same bioelectrical language. We are Scott and Queen Gaia, representatives of Earth and its allies. We welcome you to Mars. High Emissary Xylith's form pulsed with what seemed to be curiosity. You are not purely of Earth origin. Your energy signatures suggest a convergence of multiple species. This is unexpected, but it aligns with our purpose. The Neptunian leader proceeded to explain their true intentions for returning to the solar system. For millennia, they had been monitoring the development of intelligent life on Earth, waiting for the right moment to guide humanity towards its next evolutionary step. The recent activation of our outposts and your own transformations signaled that the time had come, Xylith communicated. We have returned to shepherd your species into a new era of cosmic citizenship. As if to emphasize this point, Xylith produced a crystalline device, its facets gleaming with an inner light. This contains the collective knowledge and technology of our civilization. It is our gift to your people, to aid in your transition to a spacefaring species. Scott and Queen Gaia's energy forms pulsed with a mix of excitement and caution as they accepted the device. Its surface tingled against their energy, hinting at the vast wealth of information contained within. As this exchange took place, the HSS Harmony's sensors detected multiple smaller Neptunian vessels emerging from the mothership. These ships dispersed across the solar system, heading towards various celestial bodies. Dr. Zara's voice crackled over Scott and Queen Gaia's communication link. We're tracking Neptunian activity on Venus, Mercury, and several moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They appear to be activating dormant technologies across the system. Ambassador Krosthol's voice followed, urgent and concerned. I'm initiating emergency communications with the Zorn Empire. This shift in the balance of power requires immediate diplomatic attention. As Scott and Queen Gaia processed this information, they felt a strange sensation coursing through their energy forms. Their interaction with the Neptunian technology and the rapidly changing Martian environment was causing their abilities to expand further. They realized they could now manipulate matter at a molecular level, a skill that could prove crucial in adapting to the evolving situation. Demonstrating this new ability, they reshaped a nearby rock formation into a sleek, functional communication array. High Emissary Xylith observed this display with interest. Your adaptation rate is remarkable. It seems our return has accelerated not only planetary changes, but evolutionary ones as well. As the implications of the statement sank in, Scott and Queen Gaia became aware of a global phenomenon unfolding on Earth. Ancient structures, hidden for millennia, were awakening in response to the Neptunian presence. The solar system stood on the precipice of a new era, with Mars rapidly transforming, Earth experiencing its own awakening, and the Neptunians poised to guide humanity into a cosmic future. Scott and Queen Gaia, their powers growing and their role as interspecies mediators more crucial than ever, prepared to navigate the complex landscape of this new galactic stage. As Scott and Queen Gaia absorbed the implications of the Neptunians' arrival and their role in humanity's cosmic evolution, a sudden tremor rippled through their energy forms. The Martian landscape around them shimmered, its newly formed atmosphere crackling with an unseen force. Do you feel that? Scott's consciousness pulsed within their merged form. Queen Gaia's essence responded, her awareness extending outward. The planet's magnetic field, it's fluctuating. Without a word, they streaked across the transformed Martian surface, their energy forms leaving trails of iridescent light in their wake. As they approached the polar regions, the disturbance grew stronger, pulsing in rhythm with the planet's core. Beneath the melting ice caps, a network of angular structures began to emerge, their metallic surfaces gleaming with an otherworldly sheen. Scott and Queen Gaia phased through the ice, entering one of the facilities that bore the unmistakable mark of Neptunian design. As they moved through the ancient corridors, dormant systems flickered to life, responding to their presence. They came upon a sealed chamber, its surface etched with complex bioelectrical patterns. Their merged form resonated with the door's frequencies, causing it to slide open with a soft hiss. Inside, they found a vast array of sleek, organic-looking machinery. As they approached the central console, it hummed to life, bathing them in a soft blue glow. Suddenly, a beam of energy enveloped them, scanning their unique physiology. "Scott, we've triggered something." Queen Gaia's thoughts raced through their shared consciousness. Before they could react, the machinery around them whirred into action. Tendrils of energy and matter began to swirl around their form, weaving a cocoon of transformative power. They could feel their very essence being analyzed, deconstructed, and reassembled. As the process unfolded, alarms blared aboard the HSS Harmony. Lieutenant Warren's hands flew across the control panel, her eyes widening at the data flooding her screens. Multiple unidentified vessels detected. She called out, her voice tense. "They're entering the system from the Oort cloud." Dr. Zara rushed to Warren's side, studying the sensor readings. "Those designs, they don't match anything in our databases. Not Earth, not Lurian, not even Neptunian." Ambassador Crosthall moved swiftly to the communication array. "We must alert the Neptunian mothership and our approaching fleet. This changes everything." As the crew of the Harmony scrambled to respond to the new threat, Dr. Zara's attention was drawn to the crystalline device gifted by the Neptunians. Its facets pulsed with an inner light, seemingly reacting to the unfolding events. With trembling hands, she interfaced with the alien technology. Her eyes widened as streams of data flooded her mind. "Incredible," she breathed, "this device. It contains plans for a network of wormholes throughout the solar system." Meanwhile, on the Martian surface, the bioengineering process within the ancient facility reached its climax. The energy cocoon surrounding Scott and Queen Gaia burst apart in a shower of light, revealing their transformed state. Where once there had been pure energy, now stood two beings of substance, yet still capable of shifting between physical and energy forms at will. Their bodies shimmered with an opalescent sheen, muscle and sinew interwoven with strands of pure energy. Scott flexed his new hands, marveling at the sensation. "This is extraordinary." Queen Gaia's voice, now audible yet still carrying an otherworldly resonance, replied, "We've become something entirely new, a true bridge between worlds." Their wonderment was cut short as a communication burst from the HSS Harmony reached them, detailing the approaching unidentified fleet. Without hesitation, they focused their newfound abilities, launching themselves into the Martian sky and towards a Neptunian mothership. As they approached, High Emissary Xylith emerged to meet them, the Neptunian's bioluminescent form pulsing with urgency. "You have changed," Xylith observed, before turning to the matter at hand. "The approaching fleet, they are known to us. They are the Void Harbingers, ancient enemies of cosmic progress." Scott and Queen Gaia absorbed this information, their hybrid minds processing it at incredible speeds. "What do they want?" Scott asked, his voice carrying new depths of resonance. Xylitha's form darkened. "To prevent your civilization from joining the galactic community. They fear the potential of young races, seeking to extinguish them before they can flourish." As this grim revelation settled, the HSS Harmony docked with the Neptunian mothership. Lieutenant Warren, Dr. Zara, and Ambassador Crosthall disembarked, their faces etched with concern. Dr. Zara stepped forward, the crystalline device clutched in her hands. "We may have a solution," she began, her voice filled with cautious hope. "This gift, it's not just knowledge, it's a key to our survival." As she explained the wormhole network's potential, Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a look, their hybrid forms humming with newfound power and purpose. The solar system stood on the brink of war, but within this crisis lay the seeds of a transformation beyond anything they had imagined. With the Void Harbingers approaching and time running short, The assembled group knew that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of all sentient life in the solar system. The stage was set for a battle that would reshape the cosmos. The Allied forces braced themselves as the Void Harbinger fleet bore down upon them. Scott and Queen Gaia, their hybrid forms crackling with energy, took their positions at the heart of the Martian defense network. The fate of the solar system hung in the balance. All systems ready. Lieutenant Warren's voice crackled through the communication channels, initiating defensive protocols. As the first volley of Void Harbinger weapons fire streaked across space, Scott and Queen Gaia channeled their combined power into Mars' energy shield. The planet's atmosphere shimmered, a translucent dome materializing to deflect the incoming assault. Shield holding at 87%, Dr. Zar reported from the HSS Harmony. But the strain on Scott and Queen Gaia's physiology is increasing rapidly. Scott gritted his teeth, his form flickering between solid and energy states. "We can handle it," he projected, his voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. Queen Gaia's consciousness intertwined with his, their shared persistence amplifying their power. "Focus on the wormhole network," she urged. "We need to give our fleet the advantage." As they poured more energy into maintaining both the shield and the wormhole network, their bodies began to destabilize. Tendrils of energy arced between them, their physical forms blurring at the edges. Aboard the HSS Harmony, Lieutenant Warren's eyes darted across tactical displays. "There," she exclaimed, pointing to a fluctuation in the enemy formation. "We have a window. If we can coordinate a series of rapid jumps through the wormhole network, we can outflank them." Ambassador Crosthall nodded grimly. "Relay the plan to Scott and Queen Gaia. We'll need their full power to pull this off." As the strategy was communicated, Scott and Queen Gaia steeled themselves for the Herculean task ahead. They reached deeper into their hybrid nature, tapping into reservoirs of power they hadn't known existed. The Allied fleet sprang into action, ships disappearing and reappearing through a dizzying array of wormholes. The Void Harbingers, caught off guard by the unconventional maneuvers, struggled to reorient their defenses. On Mars, Scott and Queen Gaia's forms began to merge, their individual features becoming indistinct as they channeled unprecedented amounts of energy. Their minds melded, individual thoughts giving way to a singular, focused consciousness. Dr. Zara's alarmed voice cut through the chaos. "Their vital signs are critical. We need to stabilize them before they completely dissolve." As the doctor scrambled to synthesize a stabilizing compound, the battle raged on. The HSS Harmony, capitalizing on the confusion sown by the wormhole strategy, punched through the heart of the Void Harbinger formation. Neptunian energy weapons lashed out, crippling key enemy vessels. Ambassador Crosthall led his strike team in a daring assault on one of the larger Void Harbinger ships. They fought their way through twisting corridors, alien technology sparking and hissing around them. "Push forward," Crosthall roared, his Zorn strength sending enemy combatants flying. "We must secure their weapon systems." Back on Mars, Scott and Queen Gaia's merged form pulsed with scarcely controlled power. Their consciousness, stretched to its limits, began to fray at the edges. Just as it seemed they might lose themselves entirely, a team dispatched by Dr. Zara arrived, administering the newly developed stabilizing compound. The effect was immediate. Their wildly fluctuating energy stabilized, allowing them to reassert control over their hybrid physiology. With renewed focus, they redoubled their efforts on the wormhole network and Mars defenses. The tide of battle shifted as Earth's long-dormant lunar defense system roared to life. A massive energy beam lanced out from the moon's surface, cutting a swath through the Void Harbinger fleet. Ships exploded in silent bursts of light and debris, their formation thrown into disarray. Seizing the moment, Ambassador Crosthall and his team finally broke through to the enemy ship's weapon controls. With a triumphant growl, Crosstho seized the alien interface, turning the vessel's formidable armaments against its own fleet. As Allied forces pressed their advantage, the Void Harbingers launched a desperate assault on Mars, hoping to destroy the linchpin of the wormhole network. Scott and Queen Gaia, sensing the imminent threat, made a split-second decision. We have to let go. Scott's thoughts resonated through their shared consciousness. Queen Gaia's essence pulsed in agreement. It's the only way to save Mars. In a blinding flash, they abandoned their physical forms, becoming pure energy beings. They merged with the Martian biosphere, their hybrid abilities allowing them to interface directly with the planet's newly established ecosystem. The surface of Mars came alive under their influence. Mountains shifted, canyons yawned open and closed, and storms whipped across the landscape. The Void Harbinger assault faltered in the face of this unprecedented planetary defense. Lieutenant Warren's voice rang out across the Allied communication channels. This is our chance. All ships, concentrate fire on the retreating enemy vessels. The HSS Harmony led the charge, coordinating a series of devastating strikes through the wormhole network. Void Harbinger ships, caught between the onslaught and the animated Martian defenses, fell one by one. As the last enemy vessels fled the solar system, a new challenge emerged. Scott and Queen Gaia, their consciousness spread across the entirety of Mars, found themselves unable to fully separate from the planet's biosphere. Dr. Zara, realizing the gravity of the situation, began modifying her stabilizing compound. We need to distribute this through Mars' atmosphere, she explained to the gathered leaders on the HSS Harmony. It's our only chance to reconstitute their physical forms. As preparations for this risky procedure began, the Allied species convened to discuss the future of the solar system. High Emissary Xylith stepped forward, its bioluminescent form pulsing with purpose. We stand at a crossroads. Xylith's thoughts resonated. The wormhole network and our combined defensive capabilities offer us an unprecedented opportunity for unity and progress. The emissary's proposal for a unified solar system defense force was met with murmurs of agreement and cautious optimism. As discussions continued, all eyes turned to Mars, where Dr. Zara's team initiated the atmospheric distribution of the modified compound. Scott and Queen Gaia's diffuse consciousness stirred as the treatment spread across the red planet. Their very existence hung in the balance as their energy forms began to react to the stabilizing agent. The success or failure of this procedure would not only determine their personal fate, but also shape the future of Mars and the entire solar system. As the compound worked its way through the Martian atmosphere, Scott and Queen Gaia's essence began to coalesce. Slowly, painfully, their individual identities started to reassert themselves. But the process was far from complete, and the risk of permanent dissolution still loomed large. As the compound worked its way through the Martian atmosphere, Scott and Queen Gaia's essence began to coalesce. Slowly, painfully, their individual identities started to reassert themselves. But the process was far from complete, and the risk of permanent dissolution still loomed. The surface of Mars shimmered with an ethereal mist. The modified stabilizing compound interacting with the diffuse consciousness of Scott and Queen Gaia. Hours ticked by as their energy forms gradually took shape, separating from the Martian biosphere they had become one with. Aboard the HSS Harmony, Lieutenant Warren's eyes were fixed on the holographic display of Mars. "Establish a quarantine zone around the planet," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "No one goes in or out without direct authorization." As the quarantine protocols were put in place, Ambassador Crosthow's gravelly voice came through the comm system. "HSS Harmony, this is Ambassador Crosstho. I've secured the captured Void Harbinger vessel. Beginning outer system patrol now." "Acknowledge, Ambassador," Warren replied. "Stay alert for any signs of incursion." On the planet's surface, the landscape underwent rapid transformation. Lakes formed where there had been only dust, and patches of vegetation sprouted from the rusty soil. The atmosphere thickened, swirling with new currents of air. Dr. Zara, monitoring the process from her lab on the Harmony, gasped as new data flooded her screens. The terraforming process. It's accelerating beyond our wildest projections. As the hours stretched on, two distinct energy signatures emerged from the Martian surface. They pulsed with a unique blend of human, Lurian, Etheri, and Neptunian patterns, moving independently across the transformed landscape. Track those signatures, Dr. Zara instructed her team. Where are they heading? The answer came as the energy forms converged on the ancient Neptunian facility where Scott and Queen Gaia had first undergone their hybrid transformation. As they entered the structure, it hummed to life, systems reactivating after eons of dormancy. A massive power surge emanated from the facility, temporarily disrupting the Harmony systems. When the reading stabilized, Dr. Zara's eyes widened. Two solid forms detected inside the structure. We need to get down there now. Within minutes, Dr. Zara and a medical team were aboard a shuttle, descending through Mars' evolving atmosphere. They landed near the facility, the shuttle's legs sinking slightly into the softened Martian soil. As they entered the ancient structure, their environmental suits allowing them to navigate the rapidly changing conditions, Dr. Zara's heart raced. They found Scott and Queen Gaia lying unconscious on the facility's central platform, their new bodies a marvel of hybrid physiology. Their skin emitted a soft, bioluminescent glow, reminiscent of Neptunian biology. Intricate, pulsating patterns covered their bodies, echoing Lurian markings. Even unconscious, their musculature suggested strength far beyond human norms. As Dr. Zara approached with her medical scanner, the facility sprang to life once more. A holographic message materialized, filling the chamber with ethereal light. The image of an ancient Neptunian appeared, its tentacles waving in a gesture of greeting. "Greetings, beings of the future," the hologram spoke. "If you are witnessing this message, then the great convergence we foresaw has come to pass. Within this facility lies the technology to stabilize and nurture hybrid life forms. Use it wisely, for the future of galactic harmony rests in your hands." Following the hologram's guidance, Dr. Zara and her team activated the ancient Neptunian medical devices. Beams of light enveloped Scott and Queen Gaia, bathing them in carefully calibrated energy. Their vital signs, displayed on the team's medical interfaces, began to strengthen and stabilize. Hours passed as the treatment continued. Dr. Zara watched, barely breathing, as Scott and Queen Gaia's eyes began to flicker. Slowly they opened, taking in their surroundings with a mixture of confusion and wonder. Scott's voice, deeper and more resonant than before, broke the silence. "Gaia, are you there?" "I'm here," Queen Gaia replied, her voice carrying a melodic quality it hadn't possessed before. "I can feel you in my mind." Their eyes met, and a spark of understanding passed between them. Without speaking, they communicated, testing the limits of their mental link. "It's incredible," Scott said aloud, for the benefit of Dr. Zara and her team. "We can still access our energy forms. Watch." With a thought, Scott's body shimmered and transformed into pure energy, then solidified again. Queen Gaia followed suit, her form blurring and reconstituting in the blink of an eye. Dr. Zara stepped forward, her eyes wide with amazement. "Scott, Gaia, how do you feel?" "Different," Queen Gaia replied, flexing her fingers. "Powerful, but stable." "Ho!" As Dr. Zara began a series of medical checks, Lieutenant Warren's voice came through on the comm system. "Doctor, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. The United Nations has convened an emergency session of the Solar System Defense and Diplomacy Council. They're proposing a permanent joint human-alien research base here on Mars." Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a glance, their new hybrid minds processing the implications at incredible speed. "We'll need to be part of those discussions," Scott said. "Agreed," Dr. Zara nodded. "But first, we need to get you back to the Harmony for a full examination. There's so much we need to learn about your new physiology." As they prepared to leave the ancient facility, the holographic Neptunian reappeared. "Remember," it said, its voice echoing through the chamber, "with great power comes great responsibility. The path ahead is fraught with challenges, but also filled with boundless potential. Go forth, and may the stars guide your way." The hologram faded, leaving Scott, Queen Gaia, and the medical team standing in the now silent facility. Outside, the Martian landscape continued its rapid evolution, a testament to the incredible changes that had taken place. As they boarded the shuttle to return to the HSS Harmony, Scott and Queen Gaia knew that this was only the beginning. Their transformation had opened up new possibilities, not just for themselves, but for the entire solar system and beyond. The universe, vast and full of wonders, awaited their next move. As the shuttle docked with the HSS Harmony, Scott and Queen Gaia's new forms drew curious glances from the crew. They moved with fluid grace, their hybrid physiology adapting seamlessly to the ship's artificial gravity. Dr. Zara led them to the medical bay for a thorough examination. As Scott settled onto the bio bed, holographic displays came to life, showcasing his unique internal structure. "Fascinating," Dr. Zara murmured, studying the readouts. "Your cellular structure is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's as if your bodies can reconfigure at will." Queen Gaia flexed her hand, watching as her skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. "We can feel the ship's systems," she said, her voice melodic. "It's like a faint hum in our minds." Before Dr. Zara could respond, Lieutenant Warren's voice came over the intercom. "Dr. Zara, Scott, Queen Gaia, your presence is requested on the bridge immediately. We've received new orders from Earth." They made their way to the bridge, the ship's corridors seeming to respond to their presence. Lights brightened as they passed, and door panels slid open before they could touch them. On the bridge, a holographic projection of Admiral Chun filled the main view screen. "HSS Harmony, your new mission is of utmost importance. You are to embark on a diplomatic expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy. The wormhole network has revealed a new, stable passage, and you will be the first to traverse it." Scott and Queen Gaia exchanged a glance, their telepathic link buzzing with excitement and apprehension. "Your hybrid abilities," Admiral Chin continued, nodding to Scott and Queen Gaia, "make you uniquely suited for this mission. You will serve as our primary ambassadors." As the Admiral outlined the mission parameters, Scott felt a surge of energy course through his body. He instinctively reached for Queen Gaia's hand, and as their fingers intertwined, a visible spark of energy passed between them. Lieutenant Warren, noticing the display, raised an eyebrow. "Are you two all right?" "More than all right," Scott replied, his voice resonating with newfound strength. "We're ready." The next few hours were a flurry of activity as the HSS Harmony prepared for its historic journey. Scott and Queen Gaia stood on the observation deck, watching as Earth grew smaller in the distance. As the ship approached the wormhole entry point, the hybrid couple felt a pull, as if the swirling vortex of space-time was calling to them. Scott closed his eyes, extending his senses through the ship's systems. "I can feel the wormhole structure," he said, his voice filled with awe. "It's singing to us." Queen Gaia nodded, her eyes glowing with an inner light. "We can help stabilize our passage," she said, turning to Lieutenant Warren. "May we?" Warren, though hesitant, gave her approval. Scott and Queen Gaia moved to the center of the bridge, their forms beginning to shimmer and blur. As the ship entered the wormhole, they transformed into pure energy, their essence spreading throughout the vessel. The crew watched in amazement as the usual turbulence of wormhole travel smoothed out. The ship glided through the cosmic shortcut, guided by the hybrid being's intuitive understanding of its structure. As they emerged on the other side, in a star system never before seen by human eyes, Scott and Queen Gaia reformed their physical bodies. The bridge erupted in cheers and applause. "Incredible," Lieutenant Warren breathed, staring at the view screen. "Where are we?" Before anyone could answer, the ship's sensors lit up. A massive structure loomed in the distance, its architecture unlike anything in known space. It pulsed with energy that seemed to call out to Scott and Queen Gaia. "It's a space station," Scott said, his hybrid senses reaching out to the structure. "And it's alive somehow." As the HSS Harmony approached the station, a transmission came through. The view screen filled with a dazzling array of alien faces, some familiar from Earth allies, others entirely new. "Welcome, travelers," a multi-voice chorus greeted them. "We've been expecting you." Queen Gaia stepped forward, her form shimmering with anticipation. "We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge," she said, her words echoing not just through the ship's speakers, but directly into the minds of those on the station. The alien representatives' eyes widened in surprise and interest. "You are different," they said. "Please dock with our station. We have much to discuss." As the HSS Harmony maneuvered towards the docking port, Scott and Queen Gaia prepared for their role as ambassadors. Their hybrid nature hummed with potential, ready to bridge gaps between species and forge new connections across the cosmos. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud, and the airlock cycled open. Scott took Queen Gaia's hand, their energies mingling. Together, they stepped forward to greet the unknown. Their hybrid forms a living symbol of unity and possibility.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.